Chapter 11:19. Yes, Grandmaster, I understand. Tian smiled and saluted Zhang Xiaohu. Greetings, Senior Brother Zhang. Before Zhang Xiaohu could return the salute, Hu Yinyi said, Wrong, it's Senior Brother Zhang. Big Brother, you. Lu Qingyang came to his senses and asked. What about me? Hu Yinyi glared at Lu Qingyang. Lu Qingyang shrunk his neck in fear and said, Nothing, nothing. Alright, Big Brother, let's go in first. The wind is strong here, and your body. Li Jian said with concern. Yes, Grandmaster Hu, let's go to the meeting hall first. Zhang Xiaohu also said. Then, he turned and ordered a disciple, Go and call Deputy Hall Master Lu of the Foreign Affairs Hall. Tell him to settle down the 2,000 disciples who came from afar. Yes, the disciple answered and left. When Hu Yinyi heard this, he couldn't help but be surprised. Foreign Affairs Hall. Second brother, when did our Misty School have a Foreign Affairs Hall? Why didn't I know about it? Li Jian smiled bitterly and helped Hu Yinyi up. Big brother, let's go in first. When we reach the meeting hall, you can rest for a while and then talk. How about that? Sai, look at you. You've only been back for a few days and you've already messed up the Misty School's rules. If fourth brother knows about this, will he be able to rest peacefully in the underworld? Hu Yinyi did as Li Jian said, but he was blaming them as he walked. Zhang Xiaohu's eyes narrowed when he heard this, but he immediately calmed down and acted as if he didn't care. Li Jian supported Hu Yinyi in front and looked at Zhang Xiaohu, who was standing next to him. He nodded slightly at him and left first. Zhang Xiaohu was supposed to be walking in front, but when he saw this, he didn't walk and just stood there quietly. Lu Qingyang didn't know and called out, Sect leader, aren't you going? Zhang Xiaohu smiled. Elder Lu, you go first. Oh. Lu Qingyang followed his two senior brothers and left, followed by Shui Yupeng and Tian. Shui Yupeng knew that this wasn't the time to be courteous, so she cupped her hands and didn't say much, pulling Tian into the villa. Let's go, Xiaohu. When Wenhai walked in front of Zhang Xiaohu and patted him on the shoulder with a bitter smile on his face. Of course, Hu Yinyi was the most senior elder in the Misty School. Even the former leader of the Misty School, O Peng, had to be respectful in front of him. Needless to say, people like Wenhai couldn't even muster the will to resist. Yes, Master. Zhang Xiaohu nodded with a smile. He followed Wenhai, Lu Yueming, and the others as they slowly entered the Misty Mountain Villa. The disciples in the Misty School had already received the news. Many people had rushed over and stood in the square to welcome the senior and junior brothers who had been with them day and night, as well as the new disciples who had joined the Misty School. However, when they saw the haggard Hu Yinyi, everyone felt sad and reverence for him. Is everyone well? Hu Yinyi walked to the steps of the meeting hall and turned to look at the familiar faces in the square. He couldn't help but think of more familiar faces that he couldn't see again. His heart ached slightly as he waved his hand and said, Greetings, Grand Elder. The disciples in the square shouted in unison. Everyone is back. I am finally back. Hu Yinyi was filled with emotion. His eyes were a little blurry. He choked with sobs for a moment and said, The Misty School has finally stood up again. I believe, with the concerted efforts of the disciples of the Misty School, the Misty Mountain Villa will sooner or later rise again in the Jianhu and regain its former glory. Yes, let's work together and regain our glory. The disciples were also excited and shouted in unison. Hu Yinyi smiled and nodded. He turned to look at Shui Yupeng and Shui Tian and pointed at them. Just as he was about to speak, Li Jian quickly grabbed his hand and said in a low voice, Big brother, let's go in and talk. You. Hu Yinyi frowned and wanted to break free. However, how could he compete with Li Jian at this moment? With half a push, he followed Li Jian into the meeting hall. As soon as they entered the meeting hall, Hu Yinyi pulled his hand back and scolded, Li Lauer, you, what is the meaning of this? Me? Li Jian pretended to be angry and said, Big brother, it's windy outside. Why are you still standing at such a high place? Can't you talk to the disciples when the weather is better tomorrow? Anyway, we are back and the days ahead are long. We will have plenty of opportunities in the future. Don't you think so? Li Lao. Hu Yunyi stared at Li Jian for a moment. He wanted to say something but didn't. Only when everyone entered the meeting hall did Hu Yunyi swallow his words. He waved his hand and walked to the seat of honor. Then, Hu Yunyi clasped his hands behind his back and stood in the middle of the meeting hall. He quietly looked at the seat of the Grand Elder in the meeting hall without saying a word. Not long after, everyone came in and stood in front of their seats. None of them dared to sit down. Li Jian walked to Hu Yunyi's side and said in a low voice, Big brother, the disciples have all come in. Let's sit down and talk. Sit down? How do we sit? When Hu Yunyi heard this, he pointed at the chair in front of him and said, My seat is easy to talk about, but what about this chair? Who should sit there? Li Jian didn't expect Hu Yunyi to be so stubborn. He didn't even wait for a private discussion before putting this question on the table. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. However, he still put a smile on his face and said, Big brother, this seat is naturally for my Misty School's Grand Elder. Then, Zhang Xiaohu, who had been quietly standing behind him, said, Zhang Xiaohu is the Grand Elder of my Misty School. Of course, he should sit there. Seeing that all the disciples of the Misty School were silent, Hu Yunyi pointed at Shui Yupeng and said, Even if Tian Tian is still young and cannot manage the Grand Elder's affairs, Vice Sect Leader Shui is my Misty School's Vice Sect Leader. He is also Tiantian's father. If Tian Tian cannot become the Grand Elder of the Misty School, then Vice Sect Leader Shui will naturally become the Grand Elder of the Misty School. When Tian Tian grows up, she will inherit her father's legacy and become the Grand Elder of the Misty School. In short, Hu Yunyi pointed at the gloomy-looking Zhang Xiaohu and said, In short, the appointed Grand Elder of the Misty School absolutely cannot become the Grand Elder of the Misty School. Big brother. Li Jian's expression turned cold as he said, You came back to tell us this? You want to compete with Little Hu for the Grand Elder position? Of course not. Seeing Li Jian's unyielding attitude, Hu Yunyi smiled and said, I came back to revitalize the Misty School. But, if the Grand Elder position of the Misty School is taken by a disciple of the Misty School, then how will revitalization? Chapter 11:20. Sigh, since that's the case. Li Jian's expression relaxed when he heard that. He smiled and said, That's good. Then I'll use the facts to argue with you. Go ahead. I'd like to see how that old beggar Jing Yi will convince you. Yes, I'll convince you. Li Jian looked around and said, Everyone, please take a seat. You're all the backbone of our Misty School. This position concerns the development of our Misty School. All of you can listen and express your opinions. Everyone nodded silently but didn't sit down. They only looked at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu stepped forward and sat on the right side of the leader's seat. He nodded at everyone and they sat down. Big brother, please take a seat. Li Jian pointed at his seat and smiled. This is Big brother's seat. When Big brother wasn't around, I secretly sat there for a few days. Hee hee, Hu Yunyi smiled. Maybe it'll be your seat in the future. Li Jian was stunned. Big brother, what do you mean? Hu Yunyi didn't answer. He looked at the seat beside Zhang Xiaohu and said to Shui Yupeng and Shui Tian, You two sit there. Shui Yupeng brought Shui Tian and walked quickly to Zhang Xiaohu's side. They nodded and sat down. All right, second brother. If you have something to say, just say it. Li Jian looked at Zhang Xiaohu and asked, Leader, now, the time is right. Can I say it? Zhang Xiaohu knew what Li Jian wanted to say. He smiled. Even if you don't say it, I'm sure Elder Hu won't agree. Since everyone in the meeting hall is from Misty School, just say it. Yes, as you command, Grand Faction Master. Li Jian nodded. He looked at Hu Yunyi's unhappy expression and said, Big brother, your injury seems to be very serious. Did you suffer it when you broke out of the Misty Peak's back mountain? Yes, I was hit by a consecrator from the Alliance of Righteous Sects. It hurt my vital organs and I haven't recovered yet. Hu Yunyi nodded. Since Big Brother was heavily injured while breaking out of the encirclement, then I'm sure Big Brother already knows what happened to us. Well, that's for sure. You've all been crippled of your martial arts. You've been captured by the fragrant cult. Hu Yunyi sighed. I know that because you've lost your martial arts, you can't resist the fragrant cult. That's why you brought the 2,000 disciples back. Big brother, didn't we tell Chu Yunfei to tell you that we have recovered our martial arts? Li Jianqi asked. Of course, Chu Yunfei did. He even said that there was a senior from the Immortal Path who was related to the Misty School that helped Zhang Xiaohu recover all of your martial arts. Hu Yunyi said disdainfully, I know that you guys are deliberately mystifying. You're using the empty fort strategy to confuse the incense cult, but, Big Brother, it's true. Lu Qingyang jumped up and shouted, Chu Yunfei, that brat, saw me walking, and I was worried for a long time. How can you recover your martial arts when they've been crippled? And, even if I'm not the chief disciple, I've never heard Master say that there's a senior from the Misty School that's on good terms with us. If there's really a senior from the Immortal Path who could chase you to the fragrant cult, then why didn't he appear when the Misty School was destroyed? That day, as long as he appeared on the Misty Peak, he didn't have to recover the martial arts of the thousands of disciples. Why do you think he didn't do the simple things and insisted on doing the complicated things? Li Jianqi nodded and shook his head. What Hu Yunyi said was quite reasonable, but it was true that he had recovered his martial arts. Who knew why the senior from the Immortal Path didn't appear at the critical moment of the Misty School's destruction? Why did he have to wait until the Misty School was destroyed? It's useless to say more. Li Jianqi laughed. Big brother, look. Li Jianqi pulled out the long sword at his waist. His face was slightly purple, and the tip of the long sword was 3 fingers long. Ah! Sword? Hu Yunyi couldn't sit still. He stood up and asked, Second brother, you really recovered your martial arts? Not only that, big brother, there's me too. Lu Qingyang couldn't help but walk up to Hu Yunyi and say, that day, my joints were crushed by the monks of the Dalan Temple. I couldn't even stand up. Senior uncle, we really recovered. Wen Wenhai stood up and smiled. No way, really? Hu Yunyi was stunned. He pointed at the others and asked, you all recovered? Yes, senior uncle. Thanks to sect leader Zhang, we all recovered our martial arts. Everyone said, however, in order to not attract the attention of the fragrant cult, we still pretended that we didn't recover our martial arts. This. Hu Yunyi was speechless. He waved his hand and asked everyone to sit down. His tone was pleasantly surprised. That's good. With your martial arts recovered, the strength of the Misty School will reach a higher level. We don't have to worry about the disciples of the fragrant cult. Then, he seemed to think of something and changed the topic. However, this was done by the senior who has a deep relationship with our Misty School. It has nothing to do with Zhang Xiaohu. They just borrowed his hand. Huh, big brother, you have to think about it. Why didn't the senior find someone else but Zhang Xiaohu? It was a coincidence. Hu Yunyi replied. Big brother, that day at Shixin Peak, Zhang Xiaohu was the only direct disciple of our Misty School who didn't lose his martial arts. Although the senior gave Du Feng and Ding Chao 10 years' worth of martial arts, he didn't give them the important task of recovering our martial arts. What do you think the senior meant by this? But Zhang Xiaohu's identity. Don't worry, big brother. Zhang Xiaohu is definitely not a disciple of the fragrant cult. When he came to our Misty School, he didn't know any martial arts. Moreover, the fragrant cult respects female disciples. Even if the old beggar Jing Yi had a premeditated plan, she would still choose Yang Ruping. Hu Yini thought for a moment and nodded. There's no need to argue about this. You've received such a big favor from him. Of course, you have to speak up for him. Perhaps this was also premeditated by Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu sat in his chair, quietly listening and watching. It was as if he didn't care that this was a farce. Well, since Big Brother said so, then I can only admit it. I've received such a big favor from Zhang Xiaohu. Naturally, I have to repay him. Although the old beggar Jing Yi wanted him to be the leader of the Misty School, he's also the candidate that all the Misty School disciples want. Li Jian sneered, but Big Brother is referring to a 10-year-old child. What qualifications does he have? He wants to be the leader of the Misty School as soon as he comes. Does he have the grace of being reborn to our Misty School disciples? Or can he pull our Misty School disciples out of the puppets of the fragrant cult? Is it just because he's the direct disciple of our Misty School's chief disciple? Li Jian looked at Hu Yini and said, although Zhang Xiaohu isn't Zhang Qingyue's disciple, he's still Wen Wenhai's disciple. He's also the direct disciple of fourth brother. There's nothing wrong with that. Moreover, the leader of our Misty School doesn't have to be based on seniority. Didn't Big Brother give the position of chief disciple and leader to fourth brother? Hu Yini was speechless. There's also deputy leader Shui. Li Jian looked at Shui Yupeng and said coldly, presumably, deputy leader Shui knows that the reason why fourth brother promoted Shui Yupeng to deputy leader is for the sake of the development of our Misty School. He wants to integrate the Luo Shui gang and the Misty School. If deputy leader Shui can stay in our Misty School for another 10 years and integrate into our Misty School, then, at this time, this Li will definitely persuade Zhang Xiaohu to step down and give the position of deputy leader Shui to someone who knows the ins and outs of our Misty School. Pitifully, deputy gang leader Shui has only stayed in our ethereal sect for less than 2 years and has only shown up in Huanxi Manor for 4 or 5 times. Now, you want to seize the position of the grand gang leader of our ethereal sect? Do you think you can rely on the fact that you used to be our deputy gang leader? Second brother, are you saying that you're going to support Zhang Xiaohu? Hu Yini asked. Big brother, it's not that I support him, but it's the choice of thousands of our Misty School brothers. Even if you have to fall out with Big Brother, you still want to choose Zhang Xiaohu? Hu Yini asked coldly. Big Brother, it's not a matter of falling out or not. As I said, we have to make a wise choice for the development of our Misty School. Your choice is Zhang Xiaohu. Yes, our choice is faction leader Zhang. If you don't believe me, Big Brother, you can ask them. Li Jian turned around and pointed at the crowd. But, the 2,000 disciples I brought with me, all support Shui Yupeng? Hu Yini asked with a smile. 2,000 disciples. Li Jian hesitated and looked at Zhang Xiaohu. Without waiting for Zhang Xiaohu to speak, Hu Yini said, Second brother, you're right. We have to choose a capable leader. This is what you and I think. I don't want to embarrass you, but Shui Yupeng used to be the leader of Luo Shui faction and is now the deputy leader of our Misty School. He's much better than Zhang Xiaohu in terms of martial arts, prestige, and ability. He's the best choice for leader of our Misty School. You can't delay the righteousness of the faction because of your personal feelings. Capable? Li Jian sneered. Can Shui Yupeng handle the disciples of Fragrance Cult and the disciples of the Righteous Alliance? What do you mean? Hu Yini asked curiously. Zhang Xiaohu took in the disciples of the Incense Cult into the Martial Teaching Hall and the Martial Discussion Hall. Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng, the 2 vice sect leaders, listened to him. He also took in the disciples of the Righteous Alliance into the Jinwu Hall and the Great Martial Hall. Wang Luan and Lu Bin, the 2 hall leaders, also followed Zhang Xiaohu's lead. Can Shui Yupeng do the same? Hiss. Hearing this, Hu Yini sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Zhang Xiaohu. After a while, he said, Shui Yupeng might be able to do it, but how can we prove it now? Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. Chapter 1121. Li Jian said with a smile, that's right, big brother. We can't prove it. Faction leader Zhang has subdued Ming Qing and Gao Kunheng from the Fragrance Cult, and Wang Luan and Lu Bin from the Alliance of Righteousness. Shui. Vice faction leader Zhang can't do that. Hu Yini thought for a while and looked at Zhang Xiaohu and Shui Yupeng. He sighed and said, Li Lauer, to be a faction leader, one must have qualifications, prestige and martial arts. Since you've put aside qualifications, I won't mention that Shui Yupeng is the former vice faction leader of Misty School. What about prestige? It can't be solved in a short time. Besides, Zhang Xiaohu has some prestige in Misty School. He can barely be compared with Shui Yupeng. This. Li Jian looked at Hu Yini with anger on his face. Big brother, you mean, you want Grand Faction leader Zhang to compete with Shui Yupeng in martial arts? Li Lauer, then, tell me, what else can you do? Convince the 2,000 men I brought with me? Convince Shui Yupeng and Shui Tian? And you still have to convince me? Ha, big brother. Li Jian got angry and laughed. Shui Yupeng was a famous master in Jianghu even before she entered Misty School. Although her martial arts cultivation is a little weaker than faction leader O, but how can faction leader Zhang compare with her? Big brother. I won't agree with your idea. And, no matter what. Faction leader Zhang is the faction leader of Misty School in my eyes. Others. If they want to be the faction leader, they have to convince me. That's right. Big brother. Sect Master Zhang is kind and benevolent. He has saved countless disciples of our ethereal sect. It was Sect Master Zhang's idea for us to come out of the incense-spreading sect. Otherwise, I would still be lying on the back mountain of Shixin Peak, basking in the sun. Li Lauer. Hu Yini stood up and said coldly, are you going against your big brother? Big brother, you are the big brother of the 6 ethereal tigers. You were in the past, you are now, and you will be in the future. I respect you from the bottom of my heart. It's just that, please forgive me for being disrespectful when it comes to faction leader Zhang. Big brother. Lu Qingyang also shouted, Big clan master is so good, why don't you like her? Eldest martial uncle, please reconsider. Wen Wenhai, Lu Yueming, and Xue Qing all stood up to dissuade him. When Hu Yini saw that everyone was trying to stop him, he frowned and hesitated. However, when he looked at Zhang Xiaohu, Shui Yupeng, and Shui Tian, who were sitting quietly beside him, his expression became resolute. He waved his hand and said, you have all seen Zhang Xiaohu's means, but I haven't. I want to see it. As people of the martial arts world, if we don't compete in martial arts, do we compete in rock paper scissors? Big brother, if that's the case, Li Jian didn't know why Hu Yini disliked Zhang Xiaohu so much or why he respected Shui Yupeng so much. However, he was indebted to Zhang Xiaohu and had thousands of Misty School disciples behind him. He couldn't stand up for Zhang Xiaohu. Elderly Zhang Xiaohu, who had been silent all this time, stood up and said with a smile, let's do as martial ancestor Hu says. However, martial ancestor Hu must be tired after coming from afar. 3 days later, I will compete with vice faction leader Shui in the square in front of the meeting hall. Then, he turned to Hu Yini and asked, martial ancestor Hu, what do you think? Faction leader Zhang. This isn't appropriate. Li Jian wanted to stop him. Hu Yini nodded and said, all right, I'd like to see what you're capable of in 3 days. By the way, for the next few days, can I still be in charge of the Misty School's affairs? Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile. Of course you can if it concerns the other disciples. As for the disciples I brought, I'll have to wait 3 days. It's fine. The vice faction leader of the Young Eagle Hall is martial uncle Xue Qing. If martial ancestor Hu trusts her, let her make arrangements for these disciples first. Yes, faction leader. Xue Qing bowed as if provoking Hu Yini. Very good. Hu Yini narrowed his eyes and said no more. Old man, you've gone too far. In the alchemy room of the ethereal palace, Zhang Xiaohua was on the verge of exploding after hearing Zhang Xiaohu's story. He had been scheming since Shixin Peak and spent a lot of effort to win the hearts of the thousands of disciples of the Misty School. Wasn't it all to help Zhang Xiaohu become the faction leader of the Misty School? However, all the favors he had done for the Misty School and Zhang Xiaohu's hard work couldn't compare to Shui Tiantian's status as Zhang Qingyue's direct disciple. It couldn't even compare to a single word from Hu Yuni. Forget it, forget it. Second brother, my beta school still lacks disciples. Why don't you come with the two sisters-in-law? Although you can't become the faction leader, your future will definitely be better than that of the Misty School. Fuck off. How can your Big Dipper sect's 3 kittens and 4 puppies compare to our ethereal sect? Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, I'm the faction leader of the Misty School now. If I chicken out at the last minute, not only will I be letting down Grandmaster Li and my master, but also the thousands of disciples of the Misty School. How can I walk in Jianghu in the future? Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head, stood up, and said, why don't I just stab that bastard called Shui Yupeng to death with my sword? Don't. Zhang Xiaohu knew Zhang Xiaohua's tricks. He was so scared that he grabbed him and said anxiously, Shui Yupeng is a disciple of the Misty School anyway. He can't stand your ruthless methods. Besides, he's going to compete with me in 3 days. If he suddenly dies at such a critical juncture, who wouldn't know that it has something to do with me? Besides, with your second brother's current martial arts. I'm an immortal now. Why should I be afraid of him? Zhang Xiaohu said proudly. That's how it should be. Zhang Xiaohua gave him a thumbs up and said, I thought you asked me to impersonate you again. Is that necessary? I can't always rely on you, Zhang Xiaohu snorted disdainfully. Looking at the pale white flame and the 8 trigrams purple gold furnace above, he smiled and said, this method of refining pills, when can you teach me? Humph. Zhang Xiaohua also had the same face as Zhang Xiaohu. She pointed behind her with her chin and said, your Misty School's inheritance naturally has this alchemy method. Why are you coveting my beta schools? Fine. Zhang Xiaohu stood up and said, I'm going back to see my parents. Are you coming? Of course. Zhang Xiaohua also floated in the air. In a few blinks of an eye, she was at the door of the alchemy room. She smiled and said, I haven't been back for a few days. Your soul-absorbing pill will be ready in a few days. I'm going to see my disciples. Wait for me. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and chased after her. When they were out of the restriction, Zhang Xiaohua asked, second brother, where is that guy? Which guy? Zhang Xiaohu asked curiously. However, he immediately understood and said, he's at the Kitty Hawk Hall. He's arranged by Marshal Uncle Shua. I think he's a direct disciple of the original Misty School. They can trust him. Zhang Xiaohua said and released her divine sense. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Her expression was very strange and she said, Hu Yuni is a skinny old man. I don't think. I've seen him in the Misty School before. Martial ancestor who is an elder of the Misty School. At that time, not to mention you, even ordinary Misty School disciples couldn't see him. You can see martial ancestor who now? Yes, he's talking to a boy around 10 years old. There's also an imposing man standing next to him. That boy seems to be the Shui Tian you were talking about. It should be. The only one who can be with Elder Hu all the time is Tian. Second brother, I don't know. If I tell you that I've seen this so-called Misty School's deputy gang leader, what would you think? That's strange. Shui Yupeng is the Misty School's deputy gang leader. He seems to have participated in the martial arts exhibition. It's not strange that you've seen him. Why would I be surprised? Zhang Xiaohu didn't understand. It's different from what you think, second brother. During the martial arts exhibition, it was the first time I saw a disciple of the Misty School. There were so many people, how could I remember who? It wasn't long ago that I met Vice Gang leader Shui. How? How is this possible? Shui Yupeng has always been with Elder Hu. How could you have seen him? Ha ha ha, when you know where I've seen him, I'm sure, you'll be even more surprised. Tell me, where did you see him? Evil Tiger Gang. Zhang Xiaohua said without hesitation, when I went from Shichui Mountain to the Evil Tiger Gang to kill the Blue Flame Token, I saw him outside Hungry Tiger Villa. At that time, he was with the Blue Flame Token's deputy gang leader Jiang of the Righteous Alliance. Hee, I thought he looked familiar. So that's why. That's impossible. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned. After a while, he said faintly, could it be? Elder Hu has also joined the Righteous Alliance. This time, he came back because of the Righteous Alliance? It should be. Otherwise, why hasn't the Righteous Alliance attacked after so long? Zhang Xiaohua nodded. The Righteous Alliance sure has a good plan. They've taken over the nest and chased you away, easily taking over Ethereal Sect and Nanjing Yi's thousands of fragrance cult disciples into their pockets. Zhang Xiaohu clapped his hands and said, since I know, I naturally can't let their evil plan succeed. Kill all of them. Zhang Xiaohua said noisily. No, killing for no reason will only make Elder Li and the others feel disgusted. Moreover, we can't explain it to the 2000 Misty School disciples. It's very inappropriate. Second brother, don't forget, I know the bewitching finger. With a tap on his acupoint, that guy will say anything. You know how to say it, but the problem is, others will think that you did something and will suspect you first. Zhang Xiaohu thought for a while and said, let's go, let's not talk about this for now. We'll talk about it when we get home. Okay. Zhang Xiaohua followed Zhang Xiaohu into Huanxi Villa. She still didn't look back and said hatefully, when I have time, I'll tap on this guy and see what they're planning. Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you. Chapter 1122. In the small courtyard of Huanxi Villa, compared to the past, what remained unchanged was the warmth of home. What had changed was that it was livelier. Zhang Xiaohua asked O Yen to make arrangements for Nie Qianyu and Zhang Pinger, but after Nie Qianyu and Zhang Pinger met Zhang Xiaohua's parents, they simply stayed in the small courtyard. Nie Qianyu did not have a mother since she was a child, so she had long been envious of the village life that Zhang Xiaohua talked about. Now that she saw Guo Sufei, she kept calling her aunt, which made Guo Sufei grin from ear to ear. Zhang Pinger was also accepted into the Lihua Hall of Lingxiang Peak since she was a child. Although Yin treated her very well, she did not experience the warmth of home after all. At this time, in just half a day, she was intoxicated by the overflowing family affection of the Zhang family. She was so happy that she did not want to go out of the small courtyard at all. Although Zhang Pinger had a cold temperament and was not as lively and likable as Nie Qianyu, she was still fair-skinned and beautiful. She looked like an adult, and she was very careful and well-behaved. Guo Sufei had noticed this. Although she did not say anything, she was secretly looking at Zhang Pinger's chest and butt. Her breasts and buttocks weren't exactly plump, but Guo Sufei nodded inwardly. She looked like a woman who could give birth to children. Alas, if such thoughts were known by Zhang Xiaohua. When they came to the small courtyard, Lu Qian accompanied Guo Sufei to pick vegetables. O Yen stood carefully beside them and said something, which made Guo Sufei laugh from time to time. Zhang Pinger carried a small wooden bucket and held a small wooden spoon in her hand, watering the flowers and plants in the middle of the courtyard and a few small vegetable fields. Nie Qianyu held Zhang Bairen in her arms, and Xiaohua Ji was beside her. She pointed at the butterflies flying in the flowers and plants, as if telling a story. Bairen listened attentively and was fascinated. Chang'e and Chen also came, but they looked a little sad. They were accompanying Mr. Liu and were talking about something. Zhang Kai was sitting beside Mr. Liu. He was squinting his eyes and his head was drooping down. He was probably taking a nap. Little Black and Little Yellow were lying on top of the walls of the small courtyard. They would fly or run along the walls from time to time. They were never idle. They had seen Zhang Xiaohua a long time ago, but under Zhang Xiaohua's instructions, they continued to play their games. Zhang Xiaohu entered the yard first. Hearing the noise, Chang'e stood up first and asked, "Xiaohu, where are you going?" Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Zhang Xiaohua come in as well. His eyes lit up, and a look of realization appeared on his face. He smiled and said, "I forgot. With Xiaohua here, what are you afraid of?" Zhang Xiaohu knew what Chang'e meant, but he didn't want his parents to worry, so he nodded slightly. "Senior brother sect leader, you're back." Seeing Zhang Xiaohua come in, Ou Yan, Zhang Ping'er, and Nie Qianyu all stepped forward and bowed respectfully. I'm back, I'm back." Zhang Xiaohua enjoyed it very much. He waved his hand and smiled. But then he noticed the changes in the few rooms that were usually empty. He frowned and said, "You are not going to live in the small courtyard, are you?" "Can't we?" Senior brother sect leader Nie Qianyu said curiously, "Isn't it nice to live here? I like this small courtyard after just half a day. Isn't it the same to live anywhere?" Zhang Ping'er also pursed her lips and said, "If I live here, I can also protect uncle and aunt." Greetings to Master. Xiaohua stepped forward and bowed. "Senior uncles are also good here. The small courtyard is more lively." "But..." Zhang Xiaohua scratched his head and couldn't say anything. Gua Sufei scolded, "But what? I think it's good for them to live here. Isn't it lively at home? If Chang'e and Qinchin didn't have to go back to Mingsui Hall, I would like them to live in the small courtyard with Xiaohu." "Mom, I'm talking about Xiaohua. Why did you stop me?" Zhang Xiaohu obviously had a guilty conscience and immediately complained. "Aunt, you're right. Ou Yan helped him, but there's no place for me to live here, let alone gang leader Zhang and Chang'e." Zhang Xiaohua glared at her angrily. "There are many big courtyards in Huanqi Villa. Why don't you vacate one?" I'll follow senior brother sect leader's order and do it right away," Ou Yan said with a smile. "Forget it. Don't make trouble." Zhang Xiaohua waved his hand. At this time, Zhang Kai was also awakened. He frowned and said, "Xiaohua, what are you busy with? You're not at home most of the time. Today you created a Beidou school and even accepted Villa Hedo as your disciple? What do you want to do?" Mr. Liu coughed and poked Zhang Kai with his arm, whispering, "In-law, well, the children have their own affairs. You don't have to worry about them." "Well, Villa Hedo sent a jar of green bamboo leaf the day before yesterday. Do you want to taste it? But, is he going to accept disciples or do something else?" Zhang Kai always listened to Mr. Liu, so he unconsciously lowered his tone. "Xiaolong, bring the wine and ask Qian to cook some dishes." "Yes, Dad." Zhang Xiaolong came out of the room with a small porcelain jar in his hand. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua and then looked at Nie Qianyu and Zhang Ping'er who had walked aside. He winked at Zhang Xiaohua and gave her a thumbs up. Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes angrily. When she was about to turn around, she heard Zhang Xiaolong shouting again, "Xiaohua, move your long sword. Don't always leave it in the yard. It's in the way." "Got it, big brother." Zhang Xiaohua replied angrily. She walked to a corner of the yard and picked up the Great Wisdom Sword. Holding it in her hand, she went straight into her room. The Great Wisdom Sword was Ren Xiaoyao's signature weapon. After returning to the Guizhuang house, Zhang Xiaohua rarely used it. She just left it in the yard. Translator, Transin editor, Transin. As night fell, the lights in the small courtyard of the Zhang family were brightly lit. Everyone sat in a circle, eating and chatting. The atmosphere gradually became lively. Nie Qianyu and Zhang Ping'er had only eaten a little before, so this was their first meal. They were a little restrained at first, but gradually, they relaxed and enjoyed the dinner that they had never experienced before. Although this simple meal was not as exquisite and delicious as a professional chef, it was delicious and tasty. It was not something that an outsider could make. The meal took a long time to finish. Zhang Xiaohua only ate a little bit of vegetables and chatted with everyone. Nie Qianyu and Zhang Pinger, on the other hand, were travel-worn. They rushed day and night. Now that they saw Zhang Xiaohua and confirmed their future plans, they couldn't help but feel sleepy and yawn frequently. When Ou Yen saw this, she told Guo Sufei the reason. Guo Sufei was even more tempted. She glared at Zhang Xiaohua a few times and stood up. She wanted to help the two clean up the room with Lu Qian. How could Ou Yen let her do it? She quickly said, "Auntie, don't get up. Put everything in the room properly. Just spread it out casually." Guo Sufei smiled and said, "I'm not a grandmother from a rich family. Since you are here, you are my family. How can I not care? Let's go. Let's put the two girls to sleep first." Ou Yen saw that she couldn't stop Guo Sufei, so she followed. The girls left the room. Zhang Xiaohua saw this and whispered to Zhang Xiaohu, "Stay at home. I'll help you." "Well, be careful. Don't do anything. I have a plan." Zhang Xiaohu nodded. "Where are you going?" Zhang Kai scolded, "Come back when it's time for dinner. After dinner, put down the bowl, wipe your mouth, and run away. Your mother still has something to ask you." Zhang Xiaohua quickly walked to the door and said, "Father, the moonlight is just right outside. I'll go and enjoy the moonlight. When I have some ideas, I'll tell you and Mr. Lu." Then she turned around and disappeared. "You, this child!" Zhang Kai scolded, "Why didn't you tell me why you let two girls live in your house?" "Father, these two are Xiaohua's disciples." "Didn't I tell you?" Zhang Xiaohu explained. "Are you teaming up to coax me?" He accepted Xiaohua as his disciple and Bairen as his disciple. Why did he accept two female disciples who are much older than him for no reason? Well, if he accepts disciples, then so be it. He calls them master, and the disciples call him senior brother sect leader. What kind of mess is this? Are you bullying me because I don't know anything? That's true. Zhang Xiaohu scratched his head and explained, maybe Xiaohua was the one who taught the three of them martial arts. That's why he called himself master. Xiaohua next to him picked up a mouthful of food and fed it to Zhang Bairen. She laughed and said, "Master, he likes others to call him master. He also likes to call himself master and I. That's all." Ha ha ha, Mr. Lu next to them laughed and said, "I was wondering why. So it's like this. I have to think about it. Cough cough, in-law, if you have time, help me talk to Xiaohua. You know that I've always been clumsy with words. Xiaohua is not by my side, and I miss him. But he's by my side, and I see him idling around every day. It's annoying. I have to do something." "Father, you can't be thinking of planting a few fields outside the door, right?" Zhang Xiaohu wanted to laugh. The more he thought about it, the more he felt it was possible. Sure enough, Zhang Kai said, I say, my back and legs have been aching lately. If Xiaohu didn't remind me, I would have forgotten. The land outside the door is quite fertile. If we plant some crops, next year, we'll have a good harvest. Xiaohua has a lot of strength. Let him plant a few fields outside the door. Sigh. Xiaohu, what are you doing? Father is talking to you about something serious. Don't run away. Father, this kind of thing, you can just nag me. Anyway, I exist because of other people. If I want to farm, so be it. But other people exist because of themselves. I don't have time. Zhang Xiaolong said bitterly as he held his bowl of rice. My son has grown up and can't be controlled by his mother. Zhang Kai sighed. After Zhang Xiaohua went out, she was afraid of her father's nagging. She turned around and hid underground. When she exposed her head, she was already in the young eagle hall. She found Shui Yupeng's house with her divine sense. She hid her figure and went in directly. Shui Yupeng was standing in the house with his hands behind his back. He frowned and looked down at the ground. He was pacing back and forth. Zhang Xiaohua appeared behind him like a ghost. Before Shui Yupeng could notice anything, she pointed at Shui Yupeng's major acupuncture point on his back. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip, thank you. Chapter 1123. After the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, Zhang Xiaohua's face was frosty. She looked at Shui Yupeng, who was sitting on the bed with a dazed expression. She snorted and said, "All right, you can sleep now. Remember, nothing happened tonight." "Yes, nothing happened today." Shui Yupeng muttered and turned over to lie on the Kong. Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry to leave. She stood in the room and waited for a moment, then turned around and went back to the alchemy room. 3 days later, the sky was clear and the autumn wind brought the smell of autumn. But in the square of the ethereal heights, the atmosphere was not the joy of harvest. Among the 2,000 disciples brought back by Hu Yini this time, hundreds of them were the elites of the Young Eagle Hall. They were very familiar with the disciples of the Misty School and had integrated into the Misty School in just 3 days. The other 1,000 disciples were secretly recruited by Hu Yuni in the past few years. 3 days was still a short time. At this time, they were squeezed on one side of the square with Shui Tian and Shui Yupeng. There was a faint gap between them and the disciples of the Misty School. In addition to these people, the hall masters also brought their elite disciples to surround the square, waiting for today's competition. Xue Qing led the Young Eagle Hall disciples and stood beside Shui Yupeng's disciples. He turned his head to look at the confident Shui Yupeng and the slightly nervous Shui Tian behind her. He couldn't help but frown slightly. After instructing the disciples behind him, he walked to Aunt Qin's side. Behind Aunt Qin were Chang'e and Chen Chen. When they saw Xue Qin coming, they both saluted. You two don't seem to be worried about Grand Master?" Seeing Chang'e and Chen Chen's relaxed appearance, Xue Qin was very surprised. "Yes. I don't know what trump card Grand Master Zhang has. I also feel strange, but these two girls won't say anything," Aunt Qin said with a smile. But there was also some worry in her eyes. "MHM," Xue Qin said, "it's best if you have a trump card. Otherwise, my Misty School's great situation will be ruined again." Aunt Qin nodded. "That's right. Ever since my Misty School left First Faith Peak, it was under sect leader Zhang's command. When we arrived at Misty Mountain Villa, it was with great difficulty that we managed to deal with the incense cult and the Righteous Tao Alliance's disciples. If something goes wrong this time, or if Shui Yupeng wins, I'm afraid we'll have to fight again." "I don't think so. But judging from Grand Faction leader Zhang's methods of subduing the disciples of the Righteous Alliance and the incense cult, Shui Yupeng might not be able to subdue them if he's not here. Internal strife is a small matter. The overall strength of the Misty School will definitely drop. It's difficult. Shui Yupeng used to be the deputy faction leader of our Misty School. Her kung fu was almost as good as the 6 tigers of Misty. Grand Faction leader Zhang, his kung fu is not even as good as the 2 beauties of Misty. I'm afraid it's not." Xue Qing looked at Du Feng and Ding Chao, who were not far away, and sighed. "It's strange. Why did the Immortal Senior, who is related to our Misty School, only improve the kung fu of Ding Chao and Du Feng, but not Grand Faction leader Zhang's kung fu? Du Feng and Ding Chao have been practicing kung fu since they were young. Grand Faction leader Zhang. After all, he hasn't been practicing kung fu for long. But Grand Faction leader Zhang captured Wang Dong of the incense cult. His kung fu seems to have improved by leaps and bounds. He should be able to compete with us." Xue Qing was still worried. Since Grand Faction leader Zhang's kung fu has reached such a high level, why didn't the senior work harder? Chang'e and Chen Chen heard Xue Qing complaining about the so-called Immortal Senior, Zhang Xiaohua. They laughed in their hearts, but they couldn't show it. They could only stammer. Perhaps, that senior has his own considerations. The problem is that the Misty School's kung fu is about to be picked by others. Isn't he worried? Xue Qing said impatiently. Shu, Hall Leader Xue, Grand Faction Leader Zhang is here. Aunt Qin's eyes were sharp. She had already noticed the meeting hall and immediately reminded him. Xue Qing looked up. As expected, several people walked out of the meeting hall. Hu Yunyi walked in the front, followed by Li Jian, Lu Qingyan, and Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu held the blue water sword in his hand and was expressionless. Hu Yunyi walked to the front of the square and looked around at the crowd. Before he could speak, he coughed rapidly. He coughed so hard that his back bent. Li Jian quickly stepped forward and patted his back. He wanted to send a wisp of true qi into his body, but Hu Yunyi lowered his head and raised his hand. He waved it vigorously and signaled him to stop. After a while, Hu Yunyi caught his breath and took out a jade bottle. He poured out a pill and put it into his mouth. His pale face gradually became rosy. Then he said in a low voice, "The meridians in my lungs are damaged. I can't take external inner qi. The more I send it in, the worse it will be." Li Jian sighed. He wanted to ask more, but after looking around the square, he took 2 steps back. Brothers of the Misty School, Hu Yunyi took 2 steps forward and said loudly, "Whether it's the brothers who have just joined the Misty School or the brothers who have gone through great changes in the Misty School, you must know who I am. However, I would like to introduce myself. I am Hu Yunyi, the eldest senior brother of the original Misty School's sect master O Peng. I am also the original Grand Elder of the Misty School." At that moment, Hu Yunyi's inner qi had not fully recovered and he could not circulate it. Although his voice was loud, it could not reach the ears of everyone in the square. However, everyone listened quietly, so his voice could barely reach their ears. Perhaps many of the Misty School's disciples are dissatisfied with me. They are muttering in their hearts, "If I didn't come, Zhang Xiaohu, your sect master Zhang, would have run the Misty School well. You are all looking forward to the reunion of the Misty School's disciples, but now that we are back, we are immediately fighting for the position of sect master. Wouldn't that disappoint you?" Boom! The disciples could no longer hold back and began discussing in low voices. However, Hu Yunyi's voice had long been drowned out by everyone's voices. Li Jian took a look and said loudly, "Disciples, be silent. Listen to Elder Hu." His voice was leisurely transmitted into every disciple's ears. The disciples' hearts trembled and they all shut their mouths. Hu Yunyi smiled bitterly and said, "I know what you are thinking, but I have no other choice. Everyone knows that Zhang Xiaohu's position as sect master was given to him by Abbess Jing Yi from the Cult of Fragrance. Even if we are the ones who elected him, but Zhang Xiaohu's seniority is low and his martial arts is weak. How can we convince the others? Although the heroes of the pugilistic world won't say it in front of us, who knows what they will say behind our backs? Everyone doesn't want others to point at their backs and say, 'The Misty School's sect master was appointed by the Cult of Fragrance and is a puppet of the Cult of Fragrance.' No!" The disciples behind Shui Yupeng shouted in unison. The other disciples were about to speak, but Li Jian waved his hand and they all shut up. "When I came 3 days ago, I made a big deal out of this. I'm sure the pugilistic world has already heard about it. No matter what they thought in the past, they will definitely look at the Misty School in a different light now. They will know that the Misty School is not a pawn of the Cult of Fragrance. It is a truly independent Misty School." Zhang Xiaohu heard this and couldn't help but laugh secretly. How pompous! If it weren't for the soul-scaring pill, wouldn't Ming Qing and the rest have already jumped out? He looked at Ming Qing, Gao Kunheng, and the rest. They were all lazy and didn't take Hu Yunyi's words to heart. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohu had an extremely absurd feeling. Hu Yunyi was like a person displaying his slight skill in front of an expert. He was holding an axe and playing with it while talking about exchanging pointers. But who didn't know how to deceive oneself? Of course, this competition is also a test for Zhang Xiaohu. Since he wants to be the sect master of the Misty School, he must have been prepared for this kind of test. Don't you think so? Zhang Xiaohu? Seeing that Hu Yunyi was looking at him, Zhang Xiaohu grinned and said, Elder Hu is right. How can this disciple not listen to Elder Hu's arrangements? Hu Yunyi ignored the sarcasm in Zhang Xiaohu's words and continued, only a sect master who has passed this test can be the true sect master of the Misty School. If it was any other day, they would be applauding and praising him. But other than the cheers of the people behind Shui Yupeng, the other places were cold and cheerless. Hu Yunyi didn't seem to be embarrassed. He smiled and said, Heaven knows this old man's heart for the Misty School. Although I don't have everyone's understanding now, you will know in the future. Then, he pointed at Shui Yupeng and said, Vice Sect Master Shui was personally appointed by the previous Sect Master of the Misty School, O Peng. Her loyalty and talent have been recognized by Sect Master O. She has the ability and reason to take over the responsibility left behind by Sect Master O. Only she can stop the mouths of the people of Jianghu. However, the Misty School isn't a place where one person has the final say. This old man can't arbitrarily decide the candidate for the sect master of the Misty School. Therefore, this old man used a martial arts competition that is commonly seen in Jianghu to let everyone decide who is the most suitable sect master of the Misty School. Of course, this is also an excellent opportunity for Zhang Xiaohu. Let him use martial arts to show the heroes of Jianghu that he is not a puppet of the incense cult. He has the ability to resist the incense cult's orders. Then, he turned his head to Zhang Xiaohu, as if hinting for Zhang Xiaohu to speak. You still want to pretend to be obedient after getting such a good deal? Zhang Xiaohu was slightly angered. Even though Hu Yunyi was eloquent enough to talk about the pros and cons of the matter and mentioned that he had no intention of interfering with the selection of the sect master and only wanted to provide an explanation to the entire ethereal sect, Zhang Xiaohu did not know whether to laugh or cry at his point of view. Hu Yunyi had chased him down from the position of sect master and even gave him a dignified reason to thank him and express his acceptance of the matter. Wasn't this just slapping his own face? Zhang Xiaohu walked forward and waved the jade water sword in his hand. He said in a low voice, If you want to fight, I'll fight. Why are you being so noisy? Good, a voice of praise came from the lecture hall. If you want to fight, I'll fight. Mighty Sect Master Zhang. This voice was the spark that lit the fuse. Another wave of cheers came from the square. If you want to fight, I'll fight, Grand Gang Leader Zhang, you're mighty. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please bookmark, please tip, thank you. Chapter 1124. In the square, Hu Yunyi was rather embarrassed. He no longer had the feeling of being the center of attention. He tried to say something, but his hoarse voice was drowned out by the cheers. Maybe I'm wrong. This was the first time Elder Hu was touched by his own way of handling things. He was confused for a while, but then he saw Shui Tian clenching her fists at the side of the square. Hu Yunyi felt warmth in his heart, and his eyes gradually became determined. Maybe I'm wrong, but why should I regret it? After thinking, Hu Yunyi waved his hand. Shui Yupeng saw Hu Yunyi's signal and jumped out of the crowd with her long sword. She went straight to Hu Yunyi and Zhang Xiaohu. Li Jian saw Shui Yupeng come out, and the cheers on both sides of the square were a little chaotic. He looked at Hu Yunyi, whose white hair was messy in the wind, and felt a little sad. He stepped forward and said in a clear voice, Everyone heard what Elder Hu said. I won't say more. This competition has been approved by faction leader Zhang, so please, wait and see. When they heard that Zhang Xiaohu had agreed to the competition, the crowd couldn't help but recall the time when Zhang Xiaohu had shocked the disciples of the fragrant cult. Back then, he had single-handedly barged into the alchemy hall and captured Wang Dong and a few other disciples. Hence, the cheers became even louder. Mighty faction leader Zhang became even louder. Li Jian frowned slightly, but he was secretly happy. He looked at Hu Yunyi, and then at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu knew and raised the sword in his hand. In an instant, the whole square was silent. A voice resounded in the square. "Vice faction leader Shui, please." The voice was not loud, but like Li Jian's, it reached the ears of all the disciples of the Misty School in the square, and shocked them. Ah! When Shui Yupeng heard this, she was even more shocked. She thought to herself, this Zhang Xiaohu is just a kid who has just practiced martial arts for a few years. How can his internal strength be so exquisite? Judging from the sound, it's not inferior to Li Jian's. Could it be that the message was wrong? Shui Yupeng thought about what Hu Yunyi said and felt a little more courageous. It's just that someone forcefully raised his cultivation. If it was someone like Du Feng, I might consider it for a while. But you just have profound inner strength. What kind of elixir did you use to exchange for it? If you use it with your moves and use it freely, I'm afraid it will be too much for you to do in a few years. Thinking of this, Shui Yupeng smiled and said, "Faction leader Zhang, please." After saying that, he stretched out his sword and took a defensive stance. Seeing this, Zhang Xiaohu sneered and said, "Since deputy faction leader Shui is so stubborn, I will make the first move. Please, this Shui is a guest from afar, so I'll follow the host's wishes." "Well said, Vice Gang leader Shui, please take this." As soon as Zhang Xiaohua finished speaking, he stretched out his sword. This was the starting stance of the 7 ethereal swords. It was also a way to welcome a guest. Okay, Shui Yupeng had seen Openg use the 7 ethereal swords before. Although Zhang Xiaohu's move was not as profound as Openg's, the sound of the tip of the sword piercing through the air was not to be underestimated. Good move. Shui Yupeng blocked with her sword and slanted her body. She wanted to use the tip of her sword to cut Zhang Xiaohu's fingers. Zhang Xiaohu had already focused on the 6 harmonies fist technique before he had mastered his inner force. Of course, he knew the power of pure moves. Therefore, when he was on Shixin Peak and his inner force was crippled, he took the time to focus on practicing the sword technique. Even though his inner force had been changed to genuine qi, it was not easy to control it freely. However, he was immersed in the hard work of the 7 misty swords and now he could see the results. Zhang Xiaohua was not in a hurry. He flipped his jade water sword so that the sharp blade was facing outwards. He raised his wrist slightly and went over the tip of Shui Yupeng's sword. He also attacked Shui Yupeng's wrist. This. The 2 people fighting in the arena didn't say anything, but Li Jian frowned. The 2 people just tested each other with 2 moves. They didn't cut their fingers, but stabbed their wrists. It was quite vicious. Therefore, Li Jian glanced at Hu Yunyi and hollered in a deep voice, "Sect Master Zhang, Vice Sect Master Shui, this is a sparring competition within Ethereal Sect. May I be so bold as to ask the 2 of you to show mercy?" "Yes, I understand." Shui Yupeng answered first. "Hee, Misty School. If Li Jian knows that Shui Yupeng is a member of the Decent Alliance, I wonder what he will think." Zhang Xiaohu thought, but he still said with a smile, "Thank you for your reminder, elderly." With Li Jian's reminder, the 2 people could not stab each other's vital parts with their long swords. They changed their moves and attacked the body, arms, and other places where the flesh was thicker. After a while, the 2 people gradually found the gap between them. Needless to say, although Zhang Xiaohu's internal force was excellent and his moves were exquisite, he had only practiced martial arts for a short time. The subtle differences could be seen. Gradually, Zhang Xiaohu was at a disadvantage. At this time, Chang'e and Chen Chen had realized that this Zhang Xiaohu was still the same Zhang Xiaohu, not the Zhang Xiaohua disguised as Zhang Xiaohu. They could not help but panic. Shui Yupeng laughed and said, "Faction leader Zhang, be careful." Then, without waiting for Zhang Xiaohu's response, she raised her sword above Zhang Xiaohu's aqua water, and then put 2 fingers of her left hand together. Zhang Xiaohu tried to pull out the aqua water, but he found that there seemed to be a suction force on Shui Yupeng's long sword, which was pulling him to Shui Yupeng's 2 fingers. As his genuine qi increased, the suction force became stronger. If he could not get rid of it, he had to give up the sword. Of course, giving up the sword meant losing. Ha ha ha, Zhang Xiaohu was not frightened, but laughed and said loudly, "Deputy Faction Leader Shui, you're really good. There are not many people in the Misty School who can match you." Then, he changed the topic, "But I'm not one of them." As he spoke, he opened his eyes slightly and poured all of the true energy in his meridians into the Jade Water Sword. The tip of the Jade Water Sword suddenly flashed with a brilliant light. Then, it suddenly expanded and grew to a length of over 2 feet. Ah! Li Jian was the first to notice the change of the Aqua Water Sword, and blurted out, "Sword Radiance?" "Yes, it's Sword Radiance." Zhang Xiaohu was full of pride. With a roar, he waved his hand, and the Sword Radiance twisted along Shui Yupeng's long sword, which was immediately broken into 2 pieces. And the Sword Radiance was also aimed at Shui Yupeng's 2 fingers. "Ah!" Shui Yupeng exclaimed. Before he could recover from the shock of seeing the Sword Radiance of the Aqua Water Sword had already broken his long sword. But before he could move his eyes away from the broken sword, the Sword Radiance had already reached his 2 fingers. Faction Leader Zhang Xiaohu. Although Li Jian was shocked, he had used the Sword Radiance before, so he was the first to wake up. If Zhang Xiaohu cut off Shui Yupeng's 2 fingers, not only would the 2,000 disciples of the Misty School be angry, but it would also be a loss to the overall strength of the Misty School. Therefore, he had to warn Zhang Xiaohu. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly in his heart. The Sword Radiance of the Aqua Water Sword circled around Shui Yupeng's hand, and then he withdrew it. When Shui Yupeng came back to his senses and looked down, he saw that there was a small cut on his sleeve, and his skin was exposed. Alas! Shui Yupeng smiled bitterly in his heart. Although he had overestimated Zhang Xiaohu, he still underestimated him. In the entire Jianghu, how many people could use the Sword Radiance? Zhang Xiaohu must have had some lucky encounter. His inner strength cultivation was actually on par with Li Jian, the most powerful disciple of the Misty School. With this Sword Radiance, what can I rely on to challenge Zhang Xiaohu? Faction Leader Zhang's inner strength is profound. I am no match for him. Shui Yupeng was a straightforward person. Seeing that things were not going well, he immediately changed his tone and cupped his hands in front of his chest. Hu Yunyi was watching from the side. At first, he was shocked, but then he looked worried. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he didn't know what to say. At this moment, a shrill voice sounded, "Senior Brother Zhang would like to ask for some advice on martial arts. What do you think?" When Zhang Xiaohu turned around, he looked nervous, but there was a hint of provocation in his eyes. It was as if this Zhang Xiaohu was a shameless disciple of the incense cult who had taken away what belonged to him. Tian. Shui Yupeng was shocked. She was about to scold him, but then she remembered that Tian was a direct disciple of the Misty School, not a kid from her family. She turned to look at Hu Yunyi. Hu Yunyi was delighted, but then he pulled a long face and said, Tian, you're being ridiculous. This is the place where Zhang Xiaohu and your father will compete. If you want to compete, you have to ask for Senior Brother Zhang's permission. You can't be so reckless. Zhang Xiaohu thought to himself, is it necessary? You've made it so clear. What else can I say? That's right, what else could Zhang Xiaohu say? He could only smile and say, it's okay. Junior brother Tian is the direct disciple of the chief disciple of the Misty School. His status is even more honorable than mine. It's my honor to compete with junior brother Tian. Zhang Xiaohu's words were polite, but in Hu Yunyi's ears, it was like a clap of thunder that woke him up. The melancholy on his face was swept away. He smiled and said, you two can compete first. I have something to say later. Okay, Zhang Xiaohu put away his jade water sword and struck a 6-harmony fist pose. He smiled and said, junior brother Tian Tian, please. Wait, Shui Tian Tian stood in front of Zhang Xiaohu without any fear. He waved his small hand and said, Senior brother Zhang's inner strength is profound. It's definitely not something I can compete with. Therefore, I have a condition. What condition? Zhang Xiaohu's heart skipped a beat. Is it that I can't use inner strength? Shui Tian Tian said proudly, yes. Ah. When Zhang Xiaohu heard this, he was shocked, but at the same time, he couldn't help but laugh secretly. This little thing doesn't use inner strength, but it's something that my younger brother has already played with. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Of course, I'll do as junior brother says. Zhang Xiaohu immediately agreed. Okay, senior brother Zhang, please take this. Shui Tian Tian was overjoyed when he heard this. He crossed his fists and attacked. However, just as he used his move, Zhang Xiaohu was stunned on the spot. Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you. Chapter 1125. Seeing Shui Tiantian's fist technique, Zhang Xiaohu was stunned on the spot. Then, he almost looked up to the sky and laughed. Yes, or maybe he was rolling on the ground and laughing until he couldn't breathe. The fist technique that Shui Tian Tian used was the Big Dipper magical fist that Zhang Xiaohua had sparred with Zhang Xiaohu countless times in the past. Zhang Xiaohu had not only sparred with Zhang Xiaohua's Big Dipper magical fist using the 6 fists. It could be said that this set of Big Dipper magical fist was born in Zhang Xiaohu's small house in the Lotus Flower Escort Agency. When Zhang Xiaohua was practicing, she often asked Zhang Xiaohu about it. How could Zhang Xiaohu not be familiar with the Big Dipper magical fist? Yes, even though Zhang Xiaohu couldn't perform this Big Dipper magical fist, he knew all the moves in it. Using the 6 fists to counter it wasn't difficult at all. Not to mention, Shui Tian Tian was only taught by Zhang Xiaohua using the fist manual that Zhang Xiaohua had recorded down. This Big Dipper magical fist was also strange. For disciples like Zhang Qingyue who had already practiced this fist technique, every time they performed this fist technique, a strange feeling would arise spontaneously. Unknowingly, the moves of the fist technique would deviate and they wouldn't be able to display the power of the Big Dipper magical fist. As for Shui Tian Tian and the other young disciples who were selected by Zhang Qingyue to practice the Big Dipper magical fist, when they first started practicing, they could still follow the rules and perform according to the fist manual. However, if they came into contact with other fist techniques in the future, that strange feeling would arise. Therefore, the moves of the fist technique would naturally be distorted. Therefore, even though Shui Tian Tian knew that this fist technique was profound, after practicing it for a long time, his strength would only increase slightly. The warm current that could temper his bones never appeared. When Shui Tian Tian used this Big Dipper magical fist to compete with Zhang Xiaohu, his thoughts were self-evident. However, since he had met Zhang Xiaohu, who had often sparred with the fist of the North Star, his plan was perfect. Zhang Xiaohu's 6-joint fists were executed smoothly, as if he had not encountered the strange fist of the Big Dipper. After a dozen moves, he immediately grasped Shui Tiantian's fist of the Big Dipper and punched Shui Tiantian's ribs. Immediately, he jumped out of the circle and said with a smile, "Junior brother Tian Tian, are you convinced?" This disciple is convinced. Shui Tiantian's face and ears turned red. He used to fight with others with his fist technique, but he was not used to it and was in a hurry, which allowed him to catch a flaw. Who knew that the fist technique that he regarded as his trump card was worthless in the eyes of others? How could he not say the word convinced? Alright, Tian Tian, stop fooling around. You can leave first. Hu Yuni came to the rescue in time. With a wave of his hand, he let Shui Yupeng and Shui Tian Tian leave. Zhang Xiaohu stood at the side. Just like before, he was silent and prepared to deal with all changes by sticking to the status quo. He wanted to see what other methods Hu Yuni could use to remove him from the position of the Misty School's Big Dipper master. Sure enough, Hu Yuni looked at Li Jian and turned to Zhang Xiaohu and said with a smile, I didn't expect your martial arts to be so brilliant. This makes me feel quite gratified. I don't dare. It's all because of Master's teachings. This disciple still has to thank Master for his cultivation. Hee, Ahai. Although this old man's martial arts have not recovered, I can see that Ahai's martial arts were far inferior to yours. How did he teach you such martial arts? Then, he said in a low voice, could it be that the old beggar Jing Yi spent a lot of effort? Zhang Xiaohu frowned and shook his head slightly. He ignored him and could not explain. Li Jian also frowned and sighed, Big brother, don't you still have something to say? It's better if you say it all at once. Okay, Hu Yini nodded, didn't Zhang Xiaohu say it just now? Shui Tian is the direct disciple of the original Misty School's Big Dipper master, Zhang Qingyue. His status is more honorable than his. Obviously, he recognizes the importance of the Misty School's Big Dipper master. That's natural. Big Dipper Master Zhang used to be our Misty School's Big Dipper master. I've already explained this to Big Brother. It's a pity. How can Zhang Xiaohu compare to Zhang Qingyue's Big Dipper master? This Big Dipper master is not the same Big Dipper master. Big Brother. What do you mean by that? Li Jian was a little displeased. Even though the incense cult was the one who first proposed Zhang Xiaohu's identity as the chief disciple, they later asked for the opinions of our little brother and Hai. They even got the approval of all the Misty School's disciples on Shixing Peak. What's the difference? However, after saying that, Li Jian's expression changed slightly, as if he had thought of something. Ha, second brother, do you understand what Big Brother means? Hey, Big Brother. Our Misty School has changed a lot. Even if we want Shui Tian to be the chief disciple of the Misty School, he still can't take out the chief disciple medallion. The waist token of the chief disciple? The Middle Misty School's disciples in the square were all surprised. Many of them did not know about this, and they could not help but discuss it. Silence. Li Jian was furious. The chief disciple's waist token was known only to the direct disciples. Very few people in the sect knew about it. Now that Hu Yini had spoken about it in front of everyone, it was clear that Hu Yini was determined to prevent Zhang Xiaohu from becoming the Grand Clan leader. When everyone heard Li Jian's anger, they all fell silent. However, Hu Yini smiled and said, Shui Tian is the only direct disciple of the chief disciple, Zhang Qingyue. If he were to become the chief disciple of our Misty School, it would be perfectly justifiable. Even if he did not have the legacy waist token, he would still be recognized. However, Zhang Xiaohu is different. His master is Wenhai, and he is not the chief disciple. If he wants to be the chief disciple, he has to take out the legacy waist token of the chief disciple. Only then can he truly be the chief disciple or the Grand Clan leader. Just based on the so-called fake waist token of the fragrance cult, he will never be the real Grand Clan leader of our Misty School. Big Brother Li Jian was really angry. He shouted, I did not want to embarrass you in front of everyone, but our Misty School suffered such a disaster. It is already a blessing that our disciples were able to return safely to Misty Mountain Villa. Our Misty Mountain Villa has a lot of things to do. The library, the pharmacy, and so on need to be rebuilt. We have not even seen the legacy waist token of that Lao Zi. How do you expect us to find it? From what Big Brother is saying, without the legacy waist token, only that little boy Shui Tian can become the Grand Clan leader of our Misty School. Even if other people have the best martial arts in the world, they will not be able to become the Grand Clan leader of our Misty School. Hu Yini's expression changed slightly. However, he gritted his teeth and nodded slightly, of course they can. However, this way, they will not be the direct disciples of our Misty School. This Misty School will not be the original Misty School. Ha, that's good. Li Jian laughed angrily, Big Brother, then you can take your time to find your legacy waist token. You can take your time to support your legitimate Misty sect. I'm not going to play with you anymore. I'm going to rebuild a Misty sect with Sect Master Zhang, which is not a direct descendant of Misty sect. Second brother, if you insist, Big Brother. Big Brother cannot stop you. Big Brother does not wish for the Misty school left by fourth brother to fall into the hands of evil people. Hu Yunyi's eyes were a little blurred. He muttered, that day, fourth brother handed over the young Eagle Hall disciple to me. He died in the Misty Peak in front of the Fragrance Cult, the Dalan Temple, and the Righteous Alliance. How can I be at ease with his legacy? At this moment, Zhang Xiaohu's heart skipped a beat. He said loudly, elderly, who said that our branch is going to build a Misty school that is not the direct disciples of the Misty school? If we are talking about legacies, our Misty school is the true immortal Tao legacy. Li Jian asked curiously, Grand Clan Leader Zhang, you. What do you mean? Zhang Xiaohu said in a low voice, I would like to trouble Grand Master Hu. What does the legacy waste token of our Misty school's chief disciple look like? Hu Yunyi said with some disdain, you don't even know what the legacy waste token looks like. How can you talk about being a direct disciple? Li Jian snorted and said, back then, Master didn't let me see any legacy waste token, but I am still Master's direct disciple. Seeing that Li Jian had misunderstood, Hu Yunyi sighed and said, this legacy waste token of the chief disciple is an item of my Misty school's immortal Tao legacy. Back then, I was the one who kept it, but later on, I gave the position of Grand Clan Leader to fourth brother, so I transferred it to him. This waste token is only known to me, fourth brother, and Zhang Qingyue. After saying that, he whispered what the legacy waste token looked like. Zhang Xiaohu was enlightened. Then, he looked as if he had expected it. He reached out and took out the waste token that Zhang Xiaohua gave him. He said with a smile, Grand Master Hu, look at this. Is this the waste token of the chief disciple that you mentioned? Hu Yunyi's eyes lit up. He stretched out his hand and snatched it away. After carefully looking at it, his expression dimmed. He snorted and said, that old beggar Jing Yi actually gave this to you. Looks like she's planning far ahead. When Li Jian saw this, he knew that the waste token that Zhang Xiaohu took out was the chief disciple's waste token. He couldn't help but be stunned, but then he smiled and said, Big Brother. Grand Clan Leader Zhang also obtained this waste token. It's the heavens that bless my Misty school. Who else but him can take the position of Grand Clan Leader? Hu Yunyi was at a loss for words. Just as he was thinking about how to deal with this, he heard Zhang Xiaohu say, Elder Hu, please return this waste token to me. You're from the Fragrance sect. This waste token is my Misty school's immortal Tao legacy. How can you take it? Zhang Xiaohu was furious. He waved his hand and used the telekinesis technique that Zhang Xiaohua taught him. An invisible string seemed to tug at the waste token. In an instant, the waste token was snatched from Hu Yunyi's hand and flew back to Zhang Xiaohu's hand. Dragon controlling hand? Hu Yunyi cried out in panic. He didn't care that his meridians couldn't circulate his qi and used it to execute the Misty school. But just as he stood up, his chest heaved violently. With a pu sound, he spat out a large mouthful of blood and collapsed to the ground. Big Brother. Li Jian couldn't care about anything else. He went forward to support Hu Yunyi. Blood was flowing from the corner of Hu Yunyi's mouth, and his face was pale gold. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please collect, please tip. I am a direct disciple of the Misty School, and now I have also received the legacy of the Misty School. Therefore, I am the legitimate disciple of the Misty School. From today onwards, Martial Uncle Zhang Qingyue's branch is no longer what you call legitimate. Hu Yunyi sat on the ground and shook his head weakly. I don't know where you learned the technique of passing on the incense sect. You actually pretended to be a disciple of the Misty School. Zhang Xiaohu couldn't be bothered to speak to Hu Yunyi at that moment. He surveyed the surrounding disciples and said loudly, Disciples, what I just revealed is the sword art of our ethereal sect's immortal Tao. Moreover, I also did as Elder Hu requested. Not only did I compete with Deputy Gang Leader Shui in sword technique, I also took out the token of the incense sect's chief disciple. If that still can't win Elder Hu's trust, then I don't know how to win his trust. However, Elder Hu is right. The Misty School is not a place where one person has the final say. Winning the trust of one person is not important. As long as I can win the trust of all of you, that's enough. Therefore, as for who is the legitimate disciple of the Misty School, you can decide for yourselves. Alright, let's end this farce here. All of you, disperse. The disciples of the Misty School should do what they should do. Don't be affected by this matter. Yes, big gang leader. The disciples were full of courage and they all spoke in unison. Soon after, they slowly dispersed, leaving only the 2,000 disciples that Elder Hu had brought back. They separated themselves from the young Eagle Hall disciples and quietly stood at the side of the plaza. Zhang Xiaohu glanced at them and said in a low voice, "Elderly, you, go and see, the one who accompanied Elder Hu. I really don't know how to persuade him." Sigh. Elder Hu was also worried about the inheritance of the Misty School, but I don't know why, he walked into a dead end. Li Jian said and saluted again. Congratulations, big gang leader. Your martial arts have improved greatly, and now you even have the cultivation of the immortal path. It's really the great fortune of the Misty School. Zhang Xiaohu said with a smile, I don't dare to accept such praise. I was just lucky to have learned a little bit. I've made a fool of myself in front of Elderly. Then he said, I'll leave this to Elderly. I'll go back to the meeting hall first. Yes, big gang leader. I'll definitely take care of it. After Zhang Xiaohu turned and left, Li Jian looked at Zhang Xiaohu's tall and straight back and shook his head slightly. He felt that the Zhang Xiaohu in front of him was becoming more and more mysterious and unfathomable. Unknowingly, more than 10 days passed. After the incident in the square, the Misty School disciples respected Zhang Xiaohu even more. The cohesion of the Misty School was unprecedentedly great. And Hu Yini didn't do what Zhang Xiaohu thought. He didn't see the 2,000 disciples pull him out, stand alone on the mountain, and listen to Li Jian's occasional reports. It seemed that he was also hesitating. Oh? When Zhang Xiaohu was sitting on the chair in the meeting hall and worrying about Hu Yuni's matter, he suddenly heard Zhang Xiaohua's voice behind him. Second brother, you're actually sitting on the big gang leader's chair. It seems that Shui Yupeng was defeated by you. Congratulations. Sigh, what's there to be happy about? Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. You don't know the situation now. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. She asked curiously, you won the martial arts competition, right? What can't you solve? Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly and told her what happened that day. In the end, he added, Elder Hu is the most senior and oldest elder in the Misty School. He has worked hard for the Misty School his whole life. Although he has a problem with me, he's also very attached to the Misty School. I couldn't bear to punish him and wanted him to stay, but now it seems that they're most likely going to leave. That stubborn old man. Zhang Xiaohua flicked her sleeves and said, if he's going to leave, then so be it. Otherwise, he'll mess things up. That's easy for you to say. There are still 2,000 disciples of the Misty School. If he leaves, won't he take all of them with him? From what you said, Shui Yupeng is a disciple of the Righteous Alliance. Won't my 2,000 disciples benefit the Righteous Alliance? No matter what you say, that won't do. What do you want to do then? Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Sigh, there's no other way. That's why I'm worried. Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. Oh, by the way, Xiaohua, are you here because the last batch of soul-absorbing pills has been completed? Yes, that's right. It's in the secret passage. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and then realized something. Second brother, are you going to use the soul-absorbing pills to control these 2,000 Misty School disciples? No need. Zhang Xiaohu shook his head. The soul-absorbing pills are harmful to nature. If I can avoid using them, of course I won't. Moreover, they are the disciples of the Misty School. They are my brothers. I can't use the soul-absorbing pills on them. Oh, second brother, that's a good idea. I support you. Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands. At this time, a disciple reported outside that the leaders of the drill hall and the great martial hall wanted to see him. You go back to the secret passage first. I'll see what they want. Zhang Xiaohu asked Zhang Xiaohua to enter the secret passage before letting Wang Luan and Lu Bin in. When they saw Zhang Xiaohu, they bowed and said, "Faction leader Zhang, we have something important to report to you." Well, please take a seat. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and asked them to take a seat. Then he asked, "What's the important thing?" Wang Luan looked at Lu Bin and said, "Faction leader, Shui Yupeng came to the drill hall last night with a token from the Righteous Alliance's vice leader Yu. He asked us to lead our disciples to follow his orders." Lu Bin chimed in, "Big faction leader, I'm in the same situation as clan leader Wang. I was chased into the great martial hall by Shui Yupeng. He has the token of the Righteous Alliance and wants me to listen to his orders." Zhang Xiaohu squinted his eyes and asked calmly, "What did Shui Yupeng want you to do?" Wang Luan and Lu Bin looked at each other and shook their heads. Wang Luan said, "Shui Yupeng didn't say anything. He just showed us the token and asked us to follow his orders." "Hee, how did you answer?" Zhang Xiaohu laughed. "Faction leader, of course we went with the flow. We just said that we would follow his orders." "Well done. I already know. You can go now. If there's anything else, report to me immediately." "Yes, we'll follow Grand Faction Master's orders." The two men bowed respectfully, then turned around and left. When Zhang Xiaohua came out from the secret room, Zhang Xiaohu said with a bitter smile, "Look, the person beside Elder Hu is the one who is going to overturn the Misty School. He didn't even know what's right or wrong and put the blame on me. I really want to wake him up with a punch and show him who's the real master of the Misty School." Zhang Xiaohua rolled her eyes and came up with an idea. She whispered something in Zhang Xiaohu's ear. Zhang Xiaohu's face lit up and said, "This is really feasible. It's a complete cultivation story. The ending of the story should be that Zhang Xiaohua becomes a god. But the new book needs your support. Xiaohua also needs your support. The process of an ordinary person becoming a saint is too big in the book review section. I posted a sticky post. Everyone, please leave your footprints. This post will be stuck at the top forever. Thank you everyone." Chapter 1127. The last old man opened his eyes and said coldly, "The Dalan temples Yuan Tian, Yuan Dao, Yuan Ming, and Yuan Wu were famous in Jianghu back then. They were the famous four protectors of the Dalan temple. For the sake of passing down the Shindao sect, the three of us didn't dare to show our faces in public. How could we have any reputation? Even if we stood in front of the people of Jianghu, no one would know. Daoist Haofeng's words raise the prestige of others and destroy our own morale." Bai Yanqiu smiled like a flower and said, "If Daoist Haofeng says that you are the mysterious cultivator who seriously injured the Dalan temple's master Yuan Tian, then, who in Jianghu wouldn't know?" Hearing this, Daoist Haofeng's face also showed a smug expression. Seriously injuring the abbot of the Dalan temple and then killing him was one of the earth-shattering things that Daoist Haofeng had done in his early years. He could not help but feel proud. It can't be that much. Grandmaster Yuantian's cultivation was very high. Back then, it was only because he underestimated his opponent that this old man took advantage of him. Although Yuantian died, this old man was also injured. It will take several years of recuperation for me to fully recover. Daoist Haofeng is too modest. When our sect destroys this immortal mansion, our name will shake the world and we will command the Jianghu. That will be the day you can hold your head high. The world belongs to you young people. What hope do we old people have? If it weren't for the importance of this matter, why would we be willing to come out? Daoist Hao Feng waved his hand and thought for a moment before asking, in this Jianghu assembly, did you see Abbess Xu Qing and Abbess Xu Jie? Bai Yanqiu's face showed surprise again, but then he covered his mouth with his hand and sighed. I heard that the two elders of the incense cult died a long time ago. Could it be that, they are like the Dalan Temple's master Yuandao and the others, that they also live in seclusion and cultivate? Bai Zhangmen, although you have stepped into the path of immortality, the path of immortality is far from what you can imagine with your current cultivation. The immortal Dao was different from the martial Dao. It could only temper one's inner strength and increase one's cultivation. One could flaunt one's bravery in the pugilistic world and be in the limelight for a period of time. When one cultivates the immortal Dao to a high level, not only can one overturn rivers and seas with a raise of one's hand, one can even prolong one's lifespan. Then, wouldn't they all become immortals? Bai Yanqiu was somewhat disdainful, but his face was still respectful. If what how you said is true, then, where did the people of the Tao of Immortality go? Sigh, the world has changed and vital energy has been annihilated. We cultivators of the immortal Tao have lost the foundation of our existence. How can we live forever? Daoist Master Hao Yu sighed and said, what I just said is only the phenomenon of the cultivation of the Tao of Immortality reaching the pinnacle. But, even our Shindao sect's founder, Wan Wuxin, did not reach such a realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had to use a primordial spirit projection to pass down his Tao teachings. What level is the primordial spirit projection at? Bai Yanqiu asked curiously. I don't know. Daoist Master Hao Yu shook his head. Perhaps it wasn't the pinnacle of the realm in ancient times, but now, it's already the cultivation of an immortal. Then, as one's cultivation of the Tao of Immortality deepens, will one's lifespan also increase? Bai Yanqiu probed. Exactly. But how can an ordinary cultivation have such an effect? That's why my fellow disciples, the 3 monks of the Dalan Temple, and Xu Qing and Xu Jia of the incense sect all meditate and cultivate, hoping to further break through the realm and prolong our lifespan in one fell swoop. Io, 3 Taoists, this disciple, has disturbed your cultivation. I hope you can forgive me. Bai Yanqiu hurriedly got up and bowed. Hee, it's fine, it's fine. Daoist Master Hao Yu waved his hand and said, the immortal mansion is a matter of great importance. Even if you didn't say anything, we would have left the mountain. What do you mean? Bai Yanqiu asked curiously. The immortal mansion, who knows what's inside? How can we not be curious about something that even ancestral Master Huan covets? Even if we can't take back the immortal mansion and make it the foundation of our Shindao sect's inheritance, as long as we can obtain the ancient Tao of Immortality pills inside, we might be able to break through our current bottleneck and advance our cultivation to the next level. Your lifespan will certainly increase along with it. Correct. Daoist Master Hao Yu continued, if there's some kind of immortal pill that can prolong one's lifespan, we only need one, wouldn't all our problems be solved? Life-prolonging pill? Bai Yanqiu exclaimed. Does the immortal mansion really have such a legendary pill? Maybe, maybe not, but as long as there's a chance, who would give it up? Daoist Master Hao Yu laughed. That's right, Daoist Master is right. Bai Yanqiu's face flushed red. He raised his head and asked, Li, what about the Righteous Alliance and Incense Cult's actions? Li Su was listening to Bai Yanqiu and the 3 Daoist masters talking. He didn't expect to be suddenly asked, as if he didn't hear anything. Not only Li Su, but even Liang Zhangshu and the others were intoxicated. It was as if the legendary thing was about to happen to them. Li. Bai Yanqiu asked discontentedly. I'm asking you. Oh, sect leader. Li Su came to his senses and hurriedly replied, what I heard was really unimaginable. I've learned a lot. Please forgive me, sect leader. It's all right. Just as he was about to speak, a divine sense descended from the sky like a waterfall and swept past the tent where Bai Yanqiu and the others were in, Sakura. Daoist Taoyuan frowned and asked curiously, Tenryu's sect, how did they come so quickly? However, the divine sense seemed to have sensed something and immediately swept back. It actually scanned the bodies of Daoist Taoyuan and the other two several times. You're going too far. Daoist Taoyuan was furious. Even if you're the most powerful person in the world, you can't do this. No, Daoist Taoyuan, this isn't Sakura. Bai Yanxiu suddenly shouted. Disciple has seen Sakura's divine sense in the incense cult. It didn't seem to be this strong, a nameless immortal expert. The four people looked at each other, their eyes full of astonishment. Their figures rose into the air and flew straight out of the tent. Zhang Xiaohua left the Misty Mountain Villa. She originally wanted to go south and look for Chu Jing along the way to the Dragon Mountain. However, after flying for a while, she felt somewhat reluctant. Reluctant about what? Needless to say, it was the immortal mansion on Yao Mountain. This was the Beidou School's foundation that Zhang Xiaohua had long identified. She wanted to put the immortal mansion into her pocket before between the clouds and the water. However, after careful consideration, she knew that this immortal mansion wasn't something she could swallow in one go. How could her heart be at ease? She unconsciously changed her mind and turned around to fly to the west. Far away from Yao Mountain, Zhang Xiaohua's divine sense saw Lu Town, Bao Town, Pingyao Town, Nanyang Town, Nanzhao Town, and so on. They were all filled with Jianghu people. Every street and alley was filled with people holding shining swords and spears. Ordinary people all closed their doors and peeked outside. No one dared to go out easily. Sigh. Zhang Xiaohua couldn't help but scratch her head. Chapter 11:28. At night, the moon was dark and the wind was strong. The whimpering autumn wind blew through the withered branches of the Misty Mountain Villa. The branches trembled violently in the dark night. With a kacha sound, a slightly thinner branch was broken by the wind and fell to the ground. In just a moment, two figures fell from the sky and landed under the big tree. They were the two disciples of the Misty School who were on duty. Both of them held long swords and looked around vigilantly. One of them even jumped to the top of the tree and looked around. Seeing that there was no abnormality, he jumped down. The other person looked around the big tree carefully. When that person came down, he whispered, "Did you see anything unusual?" That person shook his head, "No, there is no trace of anything unusual." "Well, there is no suspicious trace under the tree. Perhaps it is a fallen branch." That disciple pointed to the branch that was blown to the side by the wind and said, "Senior brother, what you said is reasonable. At this time, the wind is strong. It is normal for the branch to be blown off. Go to the side to patrol. Now is the critical time for our Misty School. We can't let other disciples enter easily." "Yes, senior brother." That disciple nodded and was about to leave. However, he hesitated and asked, "Senior brother, I have something to ask. Although I know it is not appropriate to say it, if I don't say it, it is really uncomfortable. Junior brother Luan, if you have something to say, just say it. I have watched you grow up. You are almost like a brother to me. If you have something to say, who else can you say it to?" "Well, senior brother, then I will take the liberty to ask." Junior brother Luan turned his head and looked at the ethereal mountain villa in the dark night. He whispered, "Alas, when I see the familiar ethereal mountain villa, even though it is a little shabby, my heart feels warm. It is much more comfortable than the ethereal hall on the Shirxin Peak, which is much more luxurious." "Hee, isn't it?" Junior brother Luan and the others went to the Misty Hall in the front mountain of the Shirxin Peak. "We were in the wilderness behind the Shirxin Peak. The feeling of returning to the Misty Mountain Villa is more emotional than you." After speaking, that senior brother looked at junior brother Luan with a smile that was not a smile. Junior brother wouldn't want to tell senior brother about reminiscing about the past and reminiscing about the past, right? "It's nothing, senior brother Lu. Actually, what I want to ask is very simple. Think about how our Misty School has gone through so many trials and tribulations. Senior brother Liu and the others had their martial arts crippled before sect leader Zhang rescued them and allowed them to recover. Now, our Misty School's disciples are all gathered together, and sect leader Zhang has even recruited the disciples of the incense cult and the alliance of righteous sects under his wing. This situation is unprecedented. It can't be, because of Grandmaster Hu's obstruction. Is it going to fall apart? Was it going to be destroyed in a day? Whenever I think about it, I feel suffocated. Senior brother Liu looked at junior brother Luan with a gratified smile and said, "To be honest, there are too many things that I don't know and I can't say. However, before martial ancestor Hu came, what was the situation in my Misty School? Of course it's getting better every day. Sect Master Zhang is a wise and brilliant man who has managed to unify the entire Misty sect flawlessly. Yes, then what about Grandmaster Hu after he leaves?" Senior brother Liu means Grandmaster Hu is going to leave. Sect leader Zhang is still the sect leader? Junior brother Luan was somewhat confused. But Grandmaster Hu is a founding member of my Misty School. If he leaves, then Grandmaster Li and the others will also leave. Moreover, aren't many of the Misty School's disciples going to leave? Junior brother Luan, let me ask you. If you were to choose, who would you choose? Is there even a need to ask? On Shixin Peak, I went through hardships with sect leader Zhang. Now that I'm here, how can I abandon him and leave? Moreover, sect leader Zhang received the inheritance of my Misty School and has the Immortal Dao inheritance token. He also has the cultivation of the Immortal Dao. He is the orthodox disciple of my Misty School. How can I choose someone else? Moreover, if Grandmaster Hu establishes another faction, Shui Yupeng will definitely be the sect leader. Although he is the deputy sect leader of my Misty School, he is still the sect leader of the Luo Shui gang. If I go, I may become a disciple of the Luo Shui gang in the future. Why would I be looking for trouble for no reason? Ha ha ha. Senior brother Liu patted junior brother Luan's shoulder and laughed. You know how to choose. Don't others know? Moreover, Grandmaster Li has already made it clear that he only recognizes sect leader Zhang. He doesn't recognize anyone else. If Grandmaster Li doesn't leave, will others leave? Hee, that's true. Those who want to leave are those who have just arrived. At most, the Misty School is no different from before Grandmaster Hu came. Junior brother Luan said mysteriously, Senior brother Liu, I'll ask one more question. Your martial arts, were you really saved by sect leader Zhang? Hearing junior brother Luan's doubts, senior brother Liu's expression changed. He stopped smiling and said, this question is quite inappropriate. How can sect leader Zhang doubt our grace? But then, he waved his hand and said, alas, I don't blame you. You and the others only live in the front mountain freely. How can you know our misery? Seeing senior brother Liu angry, junior brother Luan immediately smiled apologetically and said, I won't hide it from senior brother Liu. I've been with sect leader Zhang at Shixin Peak for several years, but I've never seen anything special about him. Even his martial arts have always been below mine. It's extremely inconsistent with his status as a direct disciple. Even when he received Abbess Jing Yi's recognition and became the chief disciple of Misty Hall, he still followed the rules and didn't have the slightest flaw. But how could he do such an earth-shattering thing behind the backs of the disciples who spent all day with us and the disciples of Incense Cult? My goodness, senior brother Liu, I'm afraid there are more than 1,000 of you. Sect leader Zhang even restored your martial arts. This is a divine ability that only immortals have. I really don't dare to believe it. Huh, what's there to not believe? Didn't you see sect leader Zhang's flying sword? Although it can't compare to the legends, but Grand Gang leader Zhang is already a cultivator of the Tao of Immortality. Restoring our martial arts should be a simple matter. Senior brother Liu said and looked in the direction of the meeting hall. After a while, he said, Lu, we'll never forget sect leader Zhang's grace. Don't listen to Elder Hu's nonsense. Even if Elder Hu stays and sect leader Zhang establishes another Misty school, Lu will definitely follow sect leader Zhang. Lu, will use my life to repay sect leader Zhang's kindness. That's right. Elder Hu. Alas, Elder Hu's body is failing. Although Tian Tian is Martial Uncle Zhang's disciple, she's still young. Elder Hu's branch, the future is bleak, the two whispered, but their bodies did not stop. Two pairs of eyes looked around and gradually walked away. When they were far away, in the shadow of a big tree not far away, there was a slight movement. A tall and thin figure slowly appeared. This person was wearing black night clothes and his face was covered with a black cloth. He held a long sword in his hand. His bright eyes stared at the backs of the two for a long time, then he sighed slightly. Immediately, he stood up, identified the direction, and used his Qing Gong to go. That person did not walk towards the Misty Mountain Villa. Instead, he walked out of the villa and went all the way south. He passed by two small villages and arrived in front of a short earth temple. That person jumped onto the earth temple and looked around. Then, as if he was not at ease, he surrounded the earth temple. He walked around the area with a radius of hundreds of feet. Then, he stopped and walked slowly to the front of the earth temple. He sat down cross-legged with his palms facing the sky and started to meditate. After an unknown period of time, a figure wearing a green robe suddenly appeared 10 feet in front of the earth temple. Then, the figure fluttered to the front of that person and landed gently. He said, Gang leader Shui, you're really early. The person who came early did not seem to expect that someone would suddenly appear and speak. When he opened his eyes in surprise, the long sword in his hand was pulled out. Seeing that the person in front of him was so alert, the man in the green robe smiled and said, Shui Yupeng, it's me. I'm the one who called you out. Leader Wu. The masked person saw the bronze mask on the face of the man in the green robe and blurted out. Gang leader Shui is really forgetful. Not long ago, we parted at the Evil Tiger Mountain Villa. Don't you know that my surname is Jiang? I wouldn't dare. Although I've never seen your face, I've heard of your name in the pugilistic world. I wonder. How should I address you? Shui Yupeng, you're really careful. Didn't I use the secret code that you and Vice Alliance leader you agreed on that piece of paper? You're still suspicious of me. The man in the green robe took off his bronze mask and revealed his real face. If that's the case, then gang leader Shui should just call me Vice Alliance leader Jiang. Forgive me, Vice Alliance leader Wu. The masked man took out a match from his bosom and lit it up to take a look. Only then did he feel relieved. He also took off his own black cloth, revealing Shui Yupeng's face. Then, Shui Yupeng covered her face with the black cloth and the man in the green robe put on his bronze mask. Vice Alliance leader Jiang, what's so important that you've called me out in such a hurry? Of course there's something important. Otherwise, how could I come out so easily? The man in the green robe said proudly, I heard that Hu Yini was humiliated at Ethereal Heights and the disciples of Misty School didn't take him seriously. Our plan to make you the leader of Misty School has been seriously hindered. Gang leader Jiang. I really admire you. You've gotten this information so quickly. Shui Yupeng cupped her hands in salute. That's what the blue flame token is for anyway. There's nothing special about it. But gang leader Jiang's information is a little outdated. Is there some good news? I've already used Vice Alliance leader use token to contact the leaders of the two halls of the Righteous Alliance in Misty School. More than 5,000 people from the two halls have agreed to listen to my orders. I know about this. This is Alliance leader Zhang's secret move in Misty School. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please bookmark, please tip. If you like this work, you're welcome to vote recommendation and monthly at Chidian.com. Chapter 1129. This secret weapon was left behind by Alliance Master Zhang, and now it's being used by you. What kind of good news is that? The green-robed man said disdainfully. I want to control these 5,000 men and turn the Misty School into a puddle of chaotic water. Only then can I take advantage of the chaos and obtain the position of gang leader of the Misty School. Fine, fine, if you do this, when will you be able to get the Misty School into the pockets of the Righteous Alliance? I'm afraid that Abbess Jing Yi would have noticed it long ago. Don't forget, Misty Sect still has thousands of disciples from Incense Cult. I hope Commander Jiang can tell Vice Alliance Master Yu that this is the only path I can take. Shui Yupeng said with a bit of shame. No need. When I received the news that the Misty School had returned to the Misty Mountain Villa, I sent the news back to the Righteous Alliance and also reported the situation you might encounter to Alliance Master Zhang. Alliance Master Zhang has already passed down the order through Vice Alliance Master Yu. Otherwise, why would I ask you to come out? Yes, I'm stupid. When I met Commander Jiang that day, I didn't expect that the Misty School disciples could return to the Misty Mountain Villa. Although the orders I received later gradually changed, I couldn't keep up with the changes, so I'm a bit stretched. I just don't know, what is Alliance Master Zhang's plan this time? What else can it be? The green-robed man took out something and threw it to Shui Yupeng. Shui Yupeng caught it. It was a jade bottle. She couldn't help but ask curiously, this is, but then, her face changed and she said anxiously, could it be, yes, Gang leader Shui, this is the poison. The green-robed man said with a smile, however, it's different from the slow-acting poison I gave you to Hu Yini last time. This time, it's highly toxic. Once it enters the mouth, the poison will take effect instantly and there's no time to save it. Gang leader Shui, you just need to find a chance to let Hu Yini from the Misty School, he doesn't need to. You just need to let Li Jian, Hu Yini, Zhang Xiaohu, Wen Wenhai and the others take it. Then, the position of gang leader of the Misty School will be yours, right? Shui Yupeng heard this and hesitated. The poison is very effective, but the others are also very vigilant. It's very difficult to succeed. Last time, when Vice Alliance leader you gave me the poison, I thought of all sorts of methods. In the end, I could only feed it to Hu Yini through a child. This time. Before he finished speaking, the green-robed man suddenly, the green-robed man was a light was it? Just as the green-robed man finished speaking, the surroundings suddenly lit up. When the green-robed man saw this, he didn't say anything else. His body remained in the same posture as he suddenly jumped up and threw himself diagonally towards a place where the lights were not yet lit up. Since you're here, do you still want to leave? A voice sounded. It was Zhang Xiaohu. He moved his sword and a light flashed as he chased after the green-robed man. Behind Zhang Xiaohu, Shui Yupeng was surrounded by bright lights. Hu Yuni, Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, and the others were all in sight. In front of Hu Yuni, there was a person with tears on her face and an expression of disbelief. Shui Tian. Father, is this really you? Shui Tian didn't wait for the green-robed man to come closer and asked. Shui Yupeng, who was wearing black clothes and had a black cloth covering her face, panicked at first. She quickly looked around and saw that the green-robed man was already lit up. There was no place for her to escape. When Shui Tian asked, Shui Yupeng had already calmed down. Looking at the disappointed Shui Tian, she stood quietly and didn't say a word. Father, do you know, how much effort did the great grandmaster put in to teach the boy martial arts? For the boy to gain a foothold in the Misty School, the great grandmaster was willing to offend the second grandmaster and gang leader Zhang. For the boy's future, the great grandmaster was willing to let father be the gang leader instead of him. Why did he do all this? Wasn't it all because of the boy? You, even if you came to the Misty School to fight for the position of gang leader, that's fine. You're the deputy gang leader of the Misty School. It's perfectly justified for you to be the gang leader. But why did you poison the great grandmaster? Through the boy's hands. Aren't you trying to frame the boy for being heartless and unjust? What's the difference between this and the boy personally poisoning the great grandmaster? The more Shui Tian spoke, the more tears streamed down his face. He really couldn't associate this person in front of him, who held poison in his hands and wanted to poison the higher-ups of the Misty School, with his father, who was so loving that he couldn't even bear to scold him. Shui Yupeng, you heartless thing. As soon as Hu Yuni spoke, he started coughing non-stop. Shui Tian habitually took out a jade bottle from his chest, but, just as he was about to pour out the elixir, he immediately realized something. With a disgusted expression, he threw the jade bottle on the ground and smashed it into pieces. Li Jian came over to support Hu Yuni. When he finally stopped coughing, Hu Yuni scolded angrily again. I've always been worried about your wild ambition and that you would harm the Misty School. But when I thought about how you're Tian's father, no matter how bad it is, I still have to give Tian some face. I was originally the deputy gang leader of the Misty School. Even if I became the gang leader, I would have to pass the position to Tian in a few years. AI, if you knew this day would come, why did you do it in the first place? If I didn't agree to Clan Leader O's request, I would have died a few years earlier. Why should I continue to suffer in this world? As he said this, he crushed the jade bottle in his hand and poured the pills into his mouth. However, when the elixir entered his mouth, Shui Yupeng was obviously stunned. She immediately looked at Zhang Xiaohu and opened her mouth to say something. However, when she saw Shui Tian's expression, she didn't say anything. She just shook her head and said, Tian, in the future, Daddy won't exist in this world anymore. You have to be obedient. Listen to sect leader Zhang. Be a true disciple of the Misty School. Daddy. Shui Tian couldn't bear it anymore. After running a few steps, he stopped and looked at Hu Yuni. Hu Yuni knew that Shui Yupeng had made up her mind. He only had time to wave his hand before he spat out another mouthful of blood and fainted completely. Shui Tian's face was filled with joy. However, when he turned around, he heard Shui Yupeng's last words, Tian, Daddy. I'm sorry. Then, Shui Yupeng slapped the top of her head. Immediately, she opened her eyes and looked at Shui Tian. Then, she fell to the ground on her back. Daddy. Shui Tian cried loudly. He rushed forward and hugged Shui Yupeng's body, which was gradually turning cold, and cried bitterly. Behind him, Li Jian also shouted, Big brother. At this moment, blood kept flowing out from the corner of Hu Yuni's mouth. His breathing was also intermittent. It was very weak. Please cast a monthly vote, please cast a recommendation vote, please collect, please tip, thank you. Chapter 1130. Seeing that Hu Yuni was dying, Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, Wen Wenhai and the others were all sad. Zhang Xiaohu also had mixed feelings. Although Hu Yuni had tried to stop him from becoming the Grand Master of the Misty School, and even suspected that he was a spy of the Cult of Fragrance, it was all for the sake of the Misty School, the successor of the Misty School, and the legacy of Openg who had died on the Misty Peak. Therefore, putting himself in Hu Yuni's shoes, Zhang Xiaohu did not resent him too much. Alas, maybe it's because he knows that he's dying and can't last long, so he must find an absolutely reliable Grand Master for the Misty School. Zhang Xiaohu thought, Shui Yupeng is also pitiful, being threatened by the alliance of righteous sects. If I didn't have a brother who is so powerful, alas, I'm sure Nun Jingyi of the Cult of Fragrance would have killed him. Thinking of his brother and seeing the dirty blood on Hu Yuni's mouth, Zhang Xiaohu's mind lit up. He shouted, Elderly, come with me, I have an idea. Grand Master, you said you have an idea? Li Jian was pleasantly surprised, but he still couldn't believe it. Yes, I really do have an idea. Zhang Xiaohu looked up at the sky and said anxiously, but we don't have enough time. Come, come with me. Zhang Xiaohu shouted. He turned around and ordered, Deputy Grand Master Wen, please bring the bodies of Shui Tian and Shui Yupeng to the conference hall. Also, don't leak out what happened here, or you'll be killed. Then, he urged Li Jiandao, Elder Li, carry Elder Hu and follow me to the meeting hall. Li Jian didn't understand what Zhang Xiaohu meant, but when he heard Zhang Xiaohu say that he had a way to save Hu Yuni, why would he care so much? He stretched out his hand and hugged Hu Yuni's body, which was gradually turning cold. Then, he executed the ethereal steps and chased after Zhang Xiaohu. Lu Qingyang, Lu Yueming, and the others also quickly chased after him. Only Wen Wenhai stayed behind to command the ethereal sect's disciples to retrieve Shui Yupeng's corpse. Before long, the meeting hall was right in front of them. Li Jian suddenly realized something, and said in a trembling voice, Grand Gang Leader Zhang, my big brother's injuries could only be healed by that expert from the Tao of Immortality? At this moment, Zhang Xiaohu couldn't care less. Without turning his head, he said, that's right, but I'm not sure. Li Jian's face was filled with ecstasy. He hurriedly said, it's fine, it's fine. The expert from the Tao of Immortality doesn't interact with us martial artists. Even if Grand Gang Leader Zhang doesn't have the confidence to invite him out, but as long as Grand Gang Leader Zhang has the intention, this Li will be deeply grateful. Zhang Xiaohu smiled bitterly. He didn't want to say that the expert from the Tao of Immortality could be summoned at any time. He was just worried that the so-called expert from the Tao of Immortality might not be able to save Hu Yuni. Thus, he could only mumble, Elder Hu is wholeheartedly devoted to the Misty School. This seat will naturally do his part. When everyone arrived at the conference hall, Zhang Xiaohu instructed, place Elder Hu on the ground. This seat will go and find that expert from the Tao of Immortality. After speaking, he walked behind the screen and entered the secret passage. What's wrong? Why is the expert from the Tao of Immortality in the Misty School's secret chamber? Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, and Lu Yueming were puzzled. Without the permission of the sect leader of the Misty School, no one was allowed to enter the secret chamber in the conference hall. Thus, Li Jian and the rest didn't have the opportunity to enter. However, Li Jian and the rest immediately understood. Their faces were filled with joy. Since the expert from the Tao of Immortality was related to the Misty School, he would naturally know about the secret chamber. If the expert from the Tao of Immortality was in the secret chamber of the Misty School, who would have the most confidence? Of course, it would be the disciples of the Misty School. They would no longer have to fear the attacks of the Aroma Cult or the Righteous Tao Alliance. How could Li Jian not be happy? But, will the expert from the Tao of Immortality be willing to help Big Brother? Li Jian couldn't help but feel nervous. Zhang Xiaohu had been in the secret chamber for a long time, but he still hadn't come out. Li Jian was a little anxious. He walked to the front of the secret chamber and stuck his head out to take a look. At this time, there was some movement outside the conference hall. Wen Wenhai had returned with Shui Tian and Shui Yupeng's corpse. Seeing that the conference hall was silent, Wen Wenhai didn't dare to speak. Only Shui Tian was sobbing softly. Her eyes were still looking at her father, unwilling to move away. Yes, only when you lose something will you know how precious it is. Although it was filthy in the eyes of others, what about in Tiantian's eyes? All that was left was the fatherly love that would never return. With a kacha sound, the door of the secret chamber opened. Everyone looked at the secret passage with hopeful eyes. The first person to come out was Zhang Xiaohu. There was no joy or disappointment on his face. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Zhang Xiaohu's back. When Zhang Xiaohua appeared in front of everyone, everyone was stunned. However, when they wanted to look behind Zhang Xiaohua again, the door of the secret chamber had already closed. You? Ren Xiaoyao? Wen Wenhai was the first to cry out in alarm. You came here on Abbess Jingyi's orders? Wen Wenhai suddenly realized, and then his face became gloomy. No, if this was a disciple of the pill expansion hall of the fragrance cult, he must have some immortal secret pills. If he took them out, he might be able to save Hu Yunyi's life. But Zhang Xiaohu actually had dealings with a disciple of the fragrance cult, and even hid him in the secret chamber of the Misty School. Even if he saved Hu Yunyi might not be able to accept his kindness. As for Zhang Xiaohu himself, how could he explain this? When Wenhai said this, Li Jian and Lu Qingyang's faces also changed. They seemed to have thought of the same thing as Wenhai. However, Lu Yueming was stunned at first, and then he asked curiously, isn't this Zhang Xiaohua? How could it be a disciple of the fragrance cult? Ren Xiaoyao, who is that? Hearing this, Wenhai was stunned on the spot, as if he was struck by lightning. He had suspected the relationship between Zhang Xiaohua and Ren Xiaoyao on Shixin Peak, but later he was dispelled by Ren Xiaoyao's identity. Now that he saw Zhang Xiaohua, of course, he thought that Zhang Xiaohua was Ren Xiaoyao. Lu Yueming had never seen Zhang Xiaohua on Shixin Peak, and now that it was night, under the lights, of course, he thought that Zhang Xiaohua was still the Zhang Xiaohua from a few years ago, so he blurted it out. When Wenhai suddenly pointed at Zhang Xiaohua and asked Zhang Xiaohu, is he, your biological brother Zhang Xiaohua, Ren Xiaoyao on Shixin Peak, the immortal master who recovered all of our martial arts? Zhang Xiaohu looked at Zhang Xiaohua, who was a little unhappy, touched his nose and smiled. It seems, yes. Could it be that he is also the immortal master who used a flying sword to assassinate a deputy chief of the Righteous Alliance and 4 old consecrators on Piamiao Peak? Is he also related to our Misty School? Lu Yueming said in disbelief. Yes, Xiaohua is my biological brother, so of course he is related to our Misty School. That day on Piamiao Peak, it was Xiaohua who killed Ban Fugue and the others. Zhang Xiaohu looked at Li Jian and the others and slowly explained. Hearing that Zhang Xiaohua was not a disciple of the fragrance cult, Li Jian and the others' faces softened a little, but they were still full of doubts. After all, this Zhang Xiaohua was only a teenager. How is this possible? Lu Yueming almost jumped up. When Wenhai had seen Zhang Xiaohua on Shixin Peak, but he had not seen Zhang Xiaohua since he saved Zhang Xiaohua and Zhang Xiaolong on the official road. If it was not for Zhang Xiaohua's chivalrous heart, Lu Yueming would have forgotten about him on the way back to the Misty School. Who would have thought that in just a few years, this young man had turned into an immortal master, replacing the image of the old immortal master in his heart with a youthful face and white hair? No one could accept this comparison in a short time. Yes, it's me. Zhang Xiaohua glared at Lu Yueming and Wenhai. He still remembered what they had said about him behind his back. He said with a smile, you didn't expect that the stupid Zhang Xiaohua who couldn't even practice the Arhat fist, the unlucky Zhang Xiaohua who died in Jianghu long ago, was actually the immortal master in your hearts? When Wenhai and Lu Yueming heard this and immediately blushed. They knew that Zhang Xiaohua had heard what they had said on the way back. How could they still doubt his identity as an immortal master? They both blushed and stepped forward. They bowed and said, we spoke rudely. Please punish us. Zhang Xiaohua was a little embarrassed. Who were these two? They were people who had saved him in the early years. He had just casually said it. Zhang Xiaohua immediately flicked his sleeve and the two were lifted up by an invisible force. Zhang Xiaohua smiled and said, 2 heroes, why are you still so polite with me? I was just joking. Immortal Master, please, reach out and look at my big brother's injury. Li Jian stepped forward and bowed respectfully. Oh, elderly, get up quickly. There's no need to look. Zhang Xiaohua quickly helped Li Jian up. Chapter 1131. When Hu Yunyi shouted this sentence, he spat out another mouthful of dirty blood. Zhang Xiaohu knew what was going to happen next. He raised his hand and hugged Hu Yunyi. He glanced at him and said, Master, come with me. When Wenhai didn't know why, but he followed Zhang Xiaohu out. Li Jian was stunned and turned to look at Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, "Don't worry, I will return you an unpoisoned elder Hu in a while." Li Jian was overjoyed and bowed again. "Thank you, immortal." No need, no need. It was second brother who brought me here. If you want to thank someone, thank him. Yes, I know. Li Jian's face hid his surprise. For a moment, everyone was amazed by what they saw in front of them. No one dared to speak loudly. Only Shui Tian was shocked by Zhang Xiaohua's young age. Then, he remembered his own life experience and Shui Yupeng who had just passed away. He couldn't help but cry again. After a moment, Shui Tian seemed to have made a decision. He stood up and walked to Li Jian. He bowed and said, "Martial ancestor Li." Li Jian looked at Shui Tian. He didn't know what attitude he should have towards him. He just waved his hand. "If you have anything to say, you should wait for Elder Hu to come back. You can say it to him." Martial ancestor Li, disciple, father did such a vicious thing. Although disciple didn't know about it, but it was disciple who personally sent the highly toxic medicinal pill into Great Grandmaster's mouth. Great Grandmaster's poisoning was also done by disciple. So, disciple doesn't dare to ask for Great Master's forgiveness. I also don't have the face to stay in front of Great Master. I also don't have the face to stay in the Misty School. Now, before Great Master wakes up, disciple asks martial ancestor Li to expel disciple from the Misty School and let disciple leave alone. This. Li Jian couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Shui Yupeng did such a thing. In fact, it had nothing to do with Shui Tian. But, as Shui Tian said, he personally fed the poison to Hu Yuni. Even if Hu Yuni didn't mind, how could Shui Tian still stay in front of Hu Yuni? But Hu Yuni loved Shui Tian, and Li Jian had seen it with his own eyes. If he were to dispose of Shui Tian without permission, he was afraid that it would be difficult for Hu Yuni to explain himself when he woke up. At this time, Shui Tian turned around and bowed to Zhang Xiaohua again. He said respectfully, "Thank you, immortal elder, for saving the great ancestor. This makes me feel relieved. If it weren't for immortal elder, I would have gone with the great ancestor." Zhang Xiaohua reached out and patted Shui Tian's head, looking like an expert. "You child, don't think so much, this has nothing to do with you, you are just being used by others. But I have to repay my father's debt with my own hands." Shui Tian's eyes were filled with tears. He didn't know what to say. In short, this Misty School. I don't have the face to stay any longer. Hearing this, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. She smiled and said, "Oh right, I heard from my second brother that you used a strange fist technique to compete with him a few days ago." Shui Tian's face turned red, and he said embarrassedly, "I don't dare, it's just a small skill, how can it be compared with Master Zhang's? What insignificant technique?" Zhang Xiaohua was displeased. "Show me a set of techniques. Now." "Here." Shui Tian was stunned. "Well, here, you can do it." Shui Tian didn't know why Zhang Xiaohua was like this, but since it was the immortal elder's order, how could he disobey? Shui Tian endured the pain, and his qi sank into his dantian. He focused his mind, held his breath, and calmed his heart. He performed the 108 moves of the Big Dipper magical fist technique that Zhang Qingyue taught him from beginning to end. Zhang Xiaohua held her chin and shook her head or nodded as she watched. Li Jian and the others were at a loss. After Shui Tian finished performing the Big Dipper magical fist technique, Zhang Xiaohua turned to ask, "Hero Lu, what do you think of this fist technique?" This. Lu Yueming was stunned. He thought for a while and said, "Immortal elder, do you want to hear the truth or a lie?" "Ha ha ha," Zhang Xiaohua laughed, "Hero Lu saved my life in the past. You don't have to call me immortal elder anymore, just call me by my name." Lu Yueming shook his head like a rattle drum. It was just a coincidence that I saved you that day. It was effortless. Moreover, it was God who borrowed my hands. Even if it wasn't me, someone else would have done it. I don't dare to take the credit. Also, Immortal Elder healed my dantian and connected my bones. This has already repaid the favor of that day. How can I mention it again? In the martial arts world, those who are more powerful are the teachers. Since Immortal Elder has already set foot on the path of immortality, you are already beyond my reach. I am convinced that you are Immortal Elder, but if I call you by your secular name, I am afraid I will feel uneasy. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. He didn't expect Lu Yueming to come up with so many reasons. He had no choice but to smile and say, "Then you can call me whatever you want, Hero Lu." Then he asked, "Hero Lu, do you think that this fist technique is quite bad?" "Yes, that's right." Lu Yueming said bluntly, "I have observed that many of Tian's fist techniques are plagiarized from other fist techniques, such as the common Liuhe fist, Luohan fist, and so on. However, some of the moves are the same, while some are different. What kind of power can these fist techniques have when put together? Can there be no flaws?" "Hero Lu, you are right. This fist technique, when used by Tian, is indeed full of flaws. However, the flaws are in the moves that Hero Lu seems to be the same as other fist techniques. If all the fist techniques are different, then the flaws will no longer exist." "Ah! This..." Lu Yueming was speechless. He asked curiously, "How did Immortal Elder know so much about this fist technique of my Misty School?" To tell you the truth, Hero Lu, when I was in Huanxi Villa, I was taught fist techniques by Captain He Tianshu. However, I was too stupid to practice Luohan fist or Liuhe fist. This fist technique is made by taking some moves from those fist techniques and putting them together." "Ah!" Not only was Lu Yueming surprised, but Li Jian and Lu Qingyang were also surprised. They said, "That's impossible." This fist technique was recorded by Zhang Qingyue at a price of 1,000 taels of silver by faction leader O. Lu Qingyang grinned and gave a thumbs up. He praised, "Immortal Elder. You are really a genius. How old were you at that time? You could already create a fist technique by yourself." "It's nothing." Zhang Xiaohua was also modest. "It's all a blessing." Then, he looked at Li Jian and said seriously, "It's just that, even though this fist technique was sold to the ethereal sect, but looking at Tian's practice, it's just barely passable. It's too different from the fist technique in the manual. So, I'm thinking of buying the manual back and letting my disciples practice it alone." Immortal Elder's disciple? Li Jian was stunned. "Which sect is Immortal Elder from?" "I'm preparing to establish the Big Dipper sect. When the time comes, I'll definitely invite Elder Li and the others to attend the ceremony." Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Beta school, I understand." No matter how stupid Li Jian was, he had already thought of the rumors about Rejuvenation Valley. Nye Qianyu had spread the name of Beta school that day. Since Immortal Elder wants to establish a sect, then this fist technique manual can be given to Immortal Elder as a congratulatory gift. However, I'm only an elder and not a faction leader. Secondly, I've never heard of this fist technique manual. Even if I want to give it to Immortal Elder, I can't." Zhang Xiaohua frowned and was about to speak when Shui Tian timidly said, "Immortal Elder, I know the whereabouts of the fist technique manual, eh? Where is it?" Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously. Shui Tian thought for a moment and probed, "If I give the fist technique manual to Immortal Elder, can Immortal Elder agree to a small condition of mine?" "Condition?" Zhang Xiaohua's tone became slightly cold. It didn't matter if he wanted the fist technique manual or not. He just didn't want it to be leaked. Now that he heard Shui Tian talk about conditions with him, he couldn't help but become slightly angry. "What conditions? Tell me." Zhang Xiaohua said coldly. Shui Tian seemed to hear the anger in Zhang Xiaohua's voice, but he gritted his teeth and pointed at Shui Yupeng's corpse. Immortal Elder, although my father did something wrong to the Misty School, but he was forced to do so. Now that he's dead, I hope the Misty School can let bygones be bygones and bury my father properly. Don't let his corpse be exposed in the countryside. This is your condition. Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. Yes, this is my condition. As long as Immortal Elder agrees, I'll immediately tell you the whereabouts of the fist technique manual. Shui Tian nodded. Hehe, that fist technique manual is in your possession? If I take action, do you think you can protect it? Shui Tiantian's face turned pale instantly. His small hands naturally covered his chest. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua smiled and turned to bow to Li Jian. He asked, elderly, although Shui Yupeng was guilty, he could atone for his crime with his death. Shui Tiantian's filial piety is commendable. I would like to agree to his condition. Chapter 1132. Thank you for your mercy. Shui Tiantian's face was filled with joy as he put the manual away. Zhang Xiaohua then asked, how many copies of this manual are there? Reporting to Immortal, there is only one copy. Then how many disciples practice this fist technique? Reporting to Immortal Elder, Master is also not used to this fist manual, so. Master first taught this lowly one, then this lowly one taught others. This lowly one used this fist manual to teach 8 people. As for whether there are other disciples, this lowly one does not know. What about these 8 people? Reporting to Immortal, among the 8 people, 4 of them traveled with me, and 4 of them stayed in Misty Mountain Villa. I don't know where they are now. As for the other 4, except for one who died of illness, the other 3 are in Young Eagle Hall. How are the other 3 practicing this fist technique? Zhang Xiaohua asked. Reporting to Immortal Elder, this fist technique is really not easy to practice. As long as you practice any other fist technique slightly, the moves in this fist technique will immediately go out of shape. The other 3 junior brothers had long stopped practicing when they escaped from Ethereal's sect. Only this lowly one has been practicing because I miss my master. Good. Zhang Xiaohua nodded with a smile and asked again, you want martial ancestrally to expel you from Misty School, do you have any plans? No. Shui Tiantian's face was gloomy. To him, Jianghu was really dangerous. He really didn't know what to do in the future. Ha ha ha, Zhang Xiaohua laughed, my beta school's 7 Stars Palace already has an owner. Shui Tian, you have already practiced my beta school's Fist of the Big Dipper. It can be said that you have fate with my beta school. Are you willing to enter my beta school and be Ai's disciple? This. Shui Tian almost couldn't believe his ears. Li Jian, Lu Qingyang, and Lu Yueming were also shocked. Their faces showed envy as they looked at Shui Tian. Immortal. Don't deceive me. Shui Tian looked at Zhang Xiaohua blankly. Why would I lie to you? My beta school's boxing manual has already been given to you. Are you still doubting me? Zhang Xiaohua rubbed her nose and laughed. Master. Disciple Shui Tian greets Master. Shui Tian fell to the ground and cried. This time, Zhang Xiaohua did not help him up. Instead, she looked up with a smile at Hu Yuni, who was being helped in by Wen Wenhai and Zhang Xiaohu. At this moment, Hu Yuni's face was clearly rosy and was no longer as dark as before. Big brother. Li Jian and Lu Qingyang also saw him. They both ran over and asked in surprise, Big brother, are you alright? First Elder's poison is no longer a problem. I think he will ask Xiaohua to give him a few more pills. Zhang Xiaohu had just said. Zhang Xiaohua interjected, you don't need to take any more detoxification pills. Elder whose poison was poisoned by the Righteous Tao Alliance. It's different from the poison of Chuanxiang cult. You only need one detoxification pill to detoxify him. Sect leader Zhang. This. What's going on? Hu Yuni turned around and asked. After listening to Zhang Xiaohu's explanation of what happened in Mo Xian's palace, Hu Yuni's face was filled with shame. He said in a low voice, Sect leader Zhang, this old man. This subordinate is really gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Please forgive me. Elder Hu, look at what you're saying. This lord knows that you don't have long to live, so you want to make arrangements after your death. As for this lord. There are many things that Elder Hu doesn't understand about my background and the way I do things. Therefore, it's normal for Elder Hu to misunderstand that it was arranged by Chuan Xiang cult. I'm ashamed. As Hu Yini spoke, he walked in front of Zhang Xiaohua and bowed. Immortal Elder. I believe that all the things that happened in my Misty School recently were caused by Immortal Elder. Zhang Xiaohua flicked her sleeve and supported Hu Yuni. She smiled and said, Elder Hu's body is weak now. Let's sit down and talk. After Hu Yuni sat down, Zhang Xiaohua nodded. These things were all done by I. Immortal Elder also bestowed Du Feng and Ding Chao with their martial arts? Yes. All the disciples of my Misty School who had their joints crushed and dantians pierced were all saved by Immortal Elder? Yes. When my Misty School counterattacked Ethereal Peak, the Righteous Alliance's Deputy Alliance Master and 4 old consecrators were also killed by Immortal Elder? Yes. Sect leader Zhang's immortal cultivation was also bestowed by Immortal Elder? This. It wasn't I, but he received the legacy of your Misty School. Then my Misty School's immortal cultivation legacy was also passed down by Immortal Elder? My Misty School's immortal cultivation legacy token was also bestowed by Immortal Elder? Yes. Sect leader Zhang subduing the disciples of the Righteous Alliance and Chuan Xiang cult was also done by Immortal Elder? This. I also tried, but in the end, it was still because of sect leader Zhang's personal charm. Every time Hu Yuni asked a question, Zhang Xiaohua would reply with a sentence. Everyone in the meeting hall felt their hearts beat violently. Every sentence represented a turning point that would determine the fate of the ethereal sect. Every sentence represented a grace that the Misty School would never be able to repay. Every sentence represented that Zhang Xiaohua should be the true master of the Misty School. Immortal Elder, forgive this old man's stupidity, but please take a seat and accept a bow from the Misty School's disciples. Hu Yuni finally said seriously, if not for Immortal Elder, my Misty School would have long been consigned to eternal damnation and become someone else's puppet. If I don't bow to you, this old man will never be able to rest in peace. Zhang Xiaohua hurriedly waved her hand and pointed at Wen Wenhai and Lu Yueming, saying, Swordsman Wen and Swordsman Lu were also I's saviors back then. Even he didn't accept a bow from I, so how can I accept a bow from them now? Hu Yuni thought for a moment and nodded, saying, since Immortal Elder says so, this old man won't force you. However, this old man would like to bow to Immortal Elder once on behalf of the dead fourth brother and the Master in heaven. This is to thank Immortal Elder for preserving the bloodline of my Misty School. This. Zhang Xiaohua was put in a difficult position. Li Jian persuaded, Immortal Elder, please don't decline. This is our Misty School's sincerity, so please accept this bow. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she raised her eyebrows and said, in that case, I won't be pretentious. I've done so much for your Misty School, so at least I've gained something. Hu Yuni was overjoyed and respectfully knelt on the ground. Zhang Xiaohua accepted the bow and hurriedly helped Hu Yuni up. However, before she could say anything, Hu Yuni said, this old man has always had a question. Would Immortal Elder please enlighten me? Zhang Xiaohua helped Hu Yuni to a chair and said with a smile, feel free to ask. I have already told you everything I know. Yes, this old man wants to know. When my Misty School was destroyed by the incense cult, the Dalan Temple, and the Righteous Alliance, why didn't Immortal Elder do anything? Even if Immortal Elder didn't do anything back then, my Misty School wouldn't have suffered such a tragic fate. It turned out that ever since Hu Yuni woke up, Zhang Xiaohu had been trying to explain. There were still some things that he hadn't explained clearly. When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she frowned slightly. Hu Yuni's question was rather disrespectful. However, after thinking for a while, she still said, "It's not that I didn't do anything. Of course, I was still overseas. In terms of time, I had just stepped onto the path of immortality, so I didn't have the strength to stop that disaster. Yes, I believe that Chu Yunfei of your sect must have told Elder Hu that when he met I in the wilderness, I had just returned from overseas. At that time, your sect was already in disarray." "Oh, that's right. Immortal Elder, now that you mention it, this old man really does remember." Immortal Elder seemed to have asked where the incense cult was at that time. Immortal Elder indeed went to find sect leader Zhang. Hu Yuni suddenly understood. Elder Hu, you can ask my second brother about the incense cult later. Great Hero Wen has also met I. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile. Immortal Elder's talent is truly unimaginable. In just a few years, it's actually so profound. Even so, there are still people who say that I's stupid. Zhang Xiaohua still didn't let Wen Wenhai and Lu Yueming off the hook. Wen Wenhai glanced at Lu Yueming, who had an awkward expression on his face, and immediately understood what was going on. I'm just kidding, Great Hero Wen. Captain, he has been muttering like this. I'll have to talk to him later. Zhang Xiaohua laughed again. I wouldn't dare. Wen Wenhai and Lu Yueming also laughed. It was as if the Zhang Xiaohua now was the real Zhang Xiaohua and not some immortal elder. Oh, by the way, Elder Hu, just now I boldly accepted Shui Tian as my disciple. However, he is still a disciple of the Misty School. Elder Hu, please be magnanimous, and grant I my wish. Come here, Tian. Hu Yuni raised his hand and beckoned. Shui Tian had been kneeling on the ground and didn't get up. When he heard this, he stood up and walked to Hu Yuni's side. Hu Yuni reached out and touched Shui Tian's head with his hand very dotingly. He said lovingly, Tian, your father's matter is your father's. It has nothing to do with you. Even if you fed me the poison, I won't blame you because you didn't know at all. So, you must remember that from the moment your great ancestor found out the truth of the matter until he fainted, he never blamed you. Great ancestor. Shui Tian cried again and threw himself into Hu Yuni's arms. Second brother, I have an urgent matter. I'll leave first. This pill is for Elder Hu. Zhang Xiaohua suddenly shouted and threw a pill to Zhang Xiaohu. Then, she turned around and disappeared. Everyone was shocked and puzzled. They all looked at Zhang Xiaohu. Zhang Xiaohu smiled and said, Xiaohua, this is a method of the immortal Tao. Look at me, I don't know either. As for what urgent matter Zhang Xiaohua had, Zhang Xiaohu didn't say anything. Shui Tian cried bitterly and didn't know about this. Hu Yuni didn't notice and waited for Shui Tian to stop crying before comforting him. However, since you have made up your mind, and it is indeed inappropriate for you to stay in the Misty School now, then follow the immortal to cultivate. But, when you succeed in your cultivation in the future, you must remember my Misty School and take care of my Misty School. Yes, please rest assured, great ancestor. This disciple will definitely not forget the Misty School's great kindness to this disciple. Also, great ancestors care for this disciple. Yes, immortal elder. Hu Yuni looked up, but Zhang Xiaohua had already disappeared. Elder Hu, Little Blossom has something to do, so I'll leave first. Before I leave, I'll leave this pill for the first elder. The first elder will take this pill in a while. If nothing unexpected happens, the first elder's internal injuries and damaged meridians will be healed. Chapter 1133. Really? Hu Yunyi was pleasantly surprised. Hee, of course it's true. Li Jian said, Faction leader Zhang, you must have used this elixir to heal your subordinates' internal injuries back then, right? Hee, Elder Li is right, it is this pill. Zhang Xiaohu was now very familiar with the Meridian Soothing Pill and recognized it at a glance. Big brother, hurry up and take it. I'll wait here to protect you. Lu Qingyang shouted. Here? That's not appropriate. Hu Yunyi was a little hesitant. This is such a heaven-sent opportunity. Big brother, hurry up and take it. If anything happens, it'll be too late to regret it. Hu Yunyi nodded, then looked at Zhang Xiaohu and said, Sect leader Zhang, please give the order to expel Shui Tian from the Misty School. Yes, I understand. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said to Shui Tian, I expel you from the Misty School today. From now on, your actions have nothing to do with the Misty School. You are no longer a disciple of the Misty School. Do you understand? This disciple understands. Thank you, sect leader Zhang. Although she knew that her future was bright, although she knew that she would be able to see these amiable grandmasters and martial uncles in the future, although she was already mentally prepared, but, when she heard Zhang Xiaohu say that she was no longer a disciple of the Misty School, Shui Tian couldn't help but feel sad, and tears fell from her eyes. Alright, Tian, return to the Young Eagle Hall as usual. There's no need to rush to pack your things. I'll take you to see your martial uncles and senior brothers tomorrow. Yes, I'll follow sect leader's orders. Shui Tiantian's voice was unusually loud. After Wen Wenhai left with Shui Tian, Hu Yunyi swallowed the Meridian Soothing Pill under everyone's gaze. He sat cross-legged in the meeting hall and quietly adjusted his breathing. The next morning, Zhang Xiaohua opened her eyes and released her divine sense. Immediately, her face showed surprise. He saw Shui Tian holding a towel, a basin, and a small kettle on the ground beside him. He stood respectfully in front of his door. On the opposite side of Shui Tian, Xiaohua Ji's face was full of vigilance. She was also holding the snow-white towel in her hand and was staring at Shui Tian like a tiger watching its prey. What are you doing? Zhang Xiaohua removed the restriction on the hut and walked out. Hearing Zhang Xiaohua's deliberate footsteps, Shui Tiantian's spirit was lifted and his face became even more respectful. Ji Xiaohua's face also became anxious. She stretched out her leg and was about to rush over to open the door, but Shui Tian was faster than her. His figure swayed slightly and he arrived in front of the door. He gently pushed the door open and called out, Master, good morning. However, before he could finish his sentence, 2 streaks of black light shot out of the door like arrows. Ah! Shui Tian was shocked and couldn't help but cry out. The basin in his hand almost fell to the ground. The 2 streaks of black light were Little Martin and Little Dog. The 2 little things floated in the air and stared unblinkingly at Shui Tian with their small black eyes. Xiaohua Ji's face flashed with joy. She wanted to cover her mouth with her hand, but halfway through, she saw Zhang Xiaohua's smiling eyes. Good morning, Master. Xiaohua Ji put down the snow-white towel on the ground and said respectfully, When I woke up, I suddenly saw second martial uncle bringing this child over. I don't know what he was doing, but he just stood there. No matter how I asked, he didn't say anything. Master. I don't know what the rules of Beta School are, but in Misty School, I have been standing in front of Master's door in the morning since I was young to serve Master T. The 2 of them felt Zhang Xiaohua's face and quickly followed. Standing in the small courtyard and looking at the rising sun, Zhang Xiaohua pointed and asked, Wait and see. What do you think? The 2 of them were stunned. After looking for a long time, they turned their heads back. You first. Zhang Xiaohua pointed at Xiaohua Ji and said. Yes, Master. Xiaohua Ji said respectfully, It looks like an egg yolk. It's probably delicious. Pfft. laughed. Shui Tian immediately laughed, but after laughing a few times, she immediately covered her mouth and looked at Zhang Xiaohua's straight face. Zhang Xiaohua held back her laughter with great difficulty. With a straight face, she said to Shui Tian, "What about you?" "Master, a year's plan is in the spring, and a day's plan is in the morning. The morning sun has just risen, and it is the time when life is full of vitality. We martial artists should cherish time like gold and dance when we hear the chicken." Then, she asked again, "Master, is this disciple right?" Zhang Xiaohua was depressed. The disciples of this big sect were indeed different. They said things in a different way. Compared to her, this village disciple, Xiaohua Ji, she couldn't compare. And, Tian is absolutely right. Zhang Xiaohua nodded calmly. Looking at Xiaohua Ji, who was a little shy, she said, "Xiaohua is not wrong. It's just because you're hungry that you think so much." "Yes, master." Xiaohua Ji's face softened. Zhang Xiaohua patted their shoulders again and hugged them in her arms. Facing the morning sun, she said, "Master is not much older than you, and I'm not as knowledgeable as Zhang Qingyue. It's just that, look, the rising sun is the best and most beautiful time of the day. Our beta school has just been built, and like the rising sun, it's full of vitality. And you are also the rising sun of our beta school. Only with your joint efforts can we have a bright future. If you just entered our beta school and have a grudge against each other and hate each other, how can our beta school be famous in Jianghu?" When the two heard this, they couldn't help but feel ashamed. They were just children with a competitive nature. They only wanted to fight for favor in front of their master. How could they think so much? "Master, we were wrong," Xiaohua Ji and Shui Tian both said in a low voice. "Alright, there's a saying in the olden days. Knowing one's mistakes is the greatest virtue. Since you don't have any relatives, you will be brothers in the future. You must love and care for each other." "Yes, master. This disciple will call Tian senior brother. He knows martial arts," Xiaohua Ji immediately said. "Xiaohua Ji is older than me, so I will call him senior brother." Shui Tian also declined. He. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "Xiaohua Ji has already kowtowed and entered our beta school. He can't run away from the title of senior brother. Although Tian's martial arts is strong, he can only be ranked behind him." "Yes, master." Shui Tian nodded and bowed, "Greetings to senior brother." "Don't." When Xiaohua Ji heard this, a strange expression appeared on her face. She hurriedly waved her hands and said, "Junior brother Tian, although I am a senior brother, I am not senior brother. Senior brother is someone else." "Then, where is senior brother?" "This little brother will pay his respects in a while," Shui Tian respectfully said. At this time, the sky had already brightened and the small courtyard gradually became lively. However, Zhang Bairen was still a child, so how could he wake up so early? Xiaohua Ji laughed and said, don't be anxious. When senior brother wakes up, I will bring him to play. It won't be too late for you to pay your respects then. And, this little brother will listen to senior brother." Shui Tian did not seem to understand the meaning behind her words. Zhang Xiaohua Ji could already guess Shui Tian's expression when he saw Zhang Bairen. However, she did not know how he would greet Zhang Bairen. Perhaps, there was a precedent in the Misty School? Also, you have 3 martial aunts who can be considered as my junior sisters. In a while, let Xiaohua bring them to pay their respects. And, your 3 martial aunts have a good relationship with each other, so you must learn from them. Yes, master. The 2 of them bowed and replied. Alright, master is going to practice the Big Dipper mystical fist. The 2 of you can also learn from the side. Tian already has the foundation. Later on, follow the fist moves from the manual and teach them to your second senior brother. Yes, master. Xiaohua and Shui Tian were overjoyed, especially Ji Xiaohua. Although she had already entered beta school, Zhang Xiaohua had not taught her anything yet. This could be considered her first lesson. After breakfast, Yan came over. Shui Tian also paid his respects to his 3 martial aunts. At this time, Zhang Bairen had also woken up from his sleep. Under Zhang Bairen's complete disregard, Shui Tian helplessly paid his respects to his senior brother. Looking at Nye Qianyu, Zhang Pinger, and Yan, as well as Zhang Bairen, Ji Xiaohua, and Shui Tian, Zhang Xiaohua was very satisfied. As long as Chu Jing was brought over by the Misty School's disciples, the disciples of Beta School would be complete. However, when she thought of Chu Jing, Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat for no reason. Please vote monthly, please vote recommendation, please bookmark, please tip, thank you. You have to hear that what you said was true, but what she said to you was all lies. She didn't kill you because she wanted to keep you captive. When your cultivation is high, she will absorb your quintessence blood. Furthermore, this demonic flag of hers needs to be refined 9 times. Not only does she want to use this demonic flag to raise her cultivation, she also wants to use it to break open space and return to the ruins. It took so many people's blood and lives to refine 1 layer of the demon flag. Every time the demon flag was refined, it would take 9 times more blood essence than the previous layer. Flowery, you have to calculate how many people's blood essence would be needed to refine this demon flag. Even if you kill the entire Jianghu and the entire human world, it still won't be enough. Tisk, Zhang Xiaohua gasped. If that was the case, the entire human world would become hell. Quick, little blossom, while I'm still stopping you kill me quickly. As Meng spoke, she wanted to take down the demonic flag, but, no matter how hard she tried, the demonic flag didn't move at all. Meng was about to cry. She shouted, Xiaohua, use the flying sword, use chasing dream. Let chasing dream become killing dream. Zhang Xiaohua also cried. Chasing dream couldn't move forward even after several attempts. Meng, how can I bear to let you go? How can I kill you with my own hands? Unless, there's no other way. Zhang Xiaohua's voice was hoarse. Meng smiled bitterly when she saw that chasing dream didn't move forward. She shook her head and said, Xiaohua, you are wrong. You don't love me at all. Zhang Xiaohua also shook her head. Meng, what nonsense are you talking about? How can I not love you? It's true. It's not your heart that loves me, and it's not my heart that loves you. It's the heart-binding curse that you used, that's causing trouble. You used the heart-binding curse to bind our hearts together. Meng smiled bitterly and cried. Heart-binding curse. Zhang Xiaohua was dazed and didn't know how to answer. Xiaohua, do you think, we only met once outside Poyang town and it'll be engraved in our hearts forever? Can you think about it every day and night? Can you not eat or drink? Meng said while crying. Why not? Meng, I've always treated you like this. Sometimes when I think of you, my heart will ache and I'll be happy. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head. Meng's eyes lit up and she said happily, I'm the same. But then she shook her head and said, but we're trapped by Ye's heart-binding curse. This is all Ye's doing. Seeing that Zhang Xiaohua still didn't understand, Meng wiped her tears and said, in fact, when Ye came here, she first established the Tenryas sect. She called herself Sakra and trained a few heavenly kings. In order to increase her power, Ye established the Dalan Temple. She combined the kung fu of the devil world with some exercises she got from the Buddhism sect and formed the Dalan Temple. On the surface, the exercises of the Dalan Temple are Buddhism sect's exercises, but the foundation is the exercises of the devil cult. All the monks of the Dalan Temple have succeeded in practicing them. After they passed away, their relics became elixirs for Ye to increase her power. Later, when Ye was fighting with Wan Wuxin, Yu Mingxin and Yang Haoye for an extremely rare thing, she was seriously injured by the three of them. When Ye hid in the Guiyuan Tower of the Dalan Temple to heal, she accidentally found a kind of heart sutra of the Buddhism sect. Xiaohua, you also know that the monks of the Dalan Temple abstain from sex. The reason why they abstain from sex is because of this heart sutra. This heart sutra was unintentionally copied from the Buddhism sect. Ye comprehended this heart sutra and combined it with some kind of secret method of the devil cult. Ye found a way to live forever. Live forever? Zhang Xiaohua almost cried out. Yes, live forever. Meng looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said, didn't you see me? How many years have I lived? Zhang Xiaohua nodded blankly. Meng sighed and continued, Ye's method was to find a man and according to the Heart Sutra, cast the Heart Sutra in the hearts of Ye and this man. Hence, Ye fell in love with this man, fell in love with him and got married. This man was the second generation Sakra apart from Ye. Then, Ye and Sakra gave birth to a daughter, which was the first generation saintess. This saintess was an independent person, but because Ye and Sakra had the Heart Sutra, this saintess had Ye's consciousness seed in her consciousness. When the saintess was 6 years old, Ye, according to the secret method, quietly died. Once Ye died, her seed in the saintess consciousness began to germinate. At that time, the saintess consciousness began to become chaotic. After a few months or years, Ye's consciousness grew up and swallowed the saintess consciousness. This saintess then became Ye. At this time, Ye wasn't much different from an ordinary person. She should spend most of her time in the Tenryu sect. Then, Ye would go to the Guiyuan Tower of the Dalan Temple and swallow the relics in the Guiyuan Tower to increase her power. When Ye's power had reached a certain age, Ye would go to the pugilistic world to find another man and cast the Heart Sutra again to let herself and another man fall in love with each other. Like this, the saintess of the Tenryu sect will always be Ye. Do you understand? Xiaohua, this is what the Tenryu sect passed down. The child of Sakra and the saintess must be a girl. First there was the saintess, then there was Sakra, then there was Sakra, then there were the 8 division heavenly kings. This was how they came to be. Meng looked at Zhang Xiaohua with tears in her eyes again and said while crying, and I am this generation's saintess, which is also the reincarnated Ye. Xiaohua, you are the man that you will choose from the pugilistic world in this life. You are destined to fall in love with Ye and help each other in difficult times. You are destined to be this generation's Sakra, your daughter, the next generation's saintess, and also the next generation's Ye's reincarnation. This matter should have been done after Ye became an adult, but I don't know why she actually did it when she met you at the ferry. Perhaps it's because you look very similar to that immortal Xiaohua, and Ye was extremely afraid of this immortal Xiaohua, so, when she met you at the ferry, she felt that you were her biggest threat at the first moment, so she cast her most powerful Heart Sutra on you. Meng seemed to be recalling something and said, this is also the only reason why you fell in love with me. Zhang Xiaohua's face turned ashen as she listened. Her eyes were at a loss, and she didn't know how to answer. She had never thought that her painstakingly engraved love for Meng was just her method of toying with the human world, her method of immortality. So, Xiaohua, I don't have the qualifications to talk about love with you. Our love is really a kind of absurdity. Meng cried with tears in her eyes. However, according to Ye's memory, it seems, she found another method from the ring you gave her. Perhaps in the future, your daughter won't have this kind of tragedy again. But it definitely won't. Yeah, she wants to swallow you. Speaking up to here, Meng's eyes turned blood red, and her face turned cold. Her tone changed again. What kind of storm does a little consciousness want to cause? I don't know how many little things like this I've swallowed. She then looked at Zhang Xiaohua and said coldly, since you already know, I won't say anything more. Although I found a way to achieve immortality without reincarnation, I can't guarantee that this method will be completely useful. So, as the man of this generation who was implanted with the heart-binding curse with me, you have to stay by my side for the rest of your life. Unless I have no other choice, I won't abandon you. Zhang Xiaohua's eyes were already filled with determination. She stared at Ye and said coldly, "Your method is the demon flag?" Yes, it's the demon flag. It's a method to refine the blood of 10,000 spirits. If it succeeds, not to mention me, even you, I can guarantee you immortality. Zhang Xiaohua shook her head slightly. This kind of immortality, it's better not to have it. Ha ha ha, this kind of immortality, it's better not to have it. What a big tone. Ye laughed maniacally. I've been struggling at death's door since tens of thousands of years ago. I've reared the Dalan temple in captivity, released the techniques of the demon realm, and searched for the saintess and Sakra. Isn't everything for the sake of immortality? How long have you lived? How do you know the wonders of immortality? Humph, humph, as the ancient people said, if you can understand the true meaning of life, if two people truly love each other, even if you only live for a day, it's enough. If you don't understand why you live, don't know what love is, and only treat love as a tool to prolong your feeble existence, then, even if you've lived for tens of thousands of years, what's the use of living until you're as old as heaven and earth? Ha 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 ha, Ye laughed maniacally again. You're just a little human, but you're just my food and you actually want to talk about love with me? What is love? I don't need to know, and I don't want to know. You're just despicable creatures, and your emotions are even more despicable. And, the love you speak of is fake, it doesn't even exist, it's just one of my techniques. You really think it's real? I saw that little thing tossing and turning over there, it's really stubborn, it actually doesn't want to be devoured by me. Then, he pointed at Peacock, Zhang Xiaohu and the rest and said, I know, Yu Mingxin from the incense cult, and Yang Haoya from the Misty School, they should have been able to cultivate successfully, but they were delayed by this so-called love, and both of their foundations were damaged. One of them was looking for self-pity at the Sorrowless Lake, while the other came to the Dalan Temple to find me, the Sakra of the demon realm, to find a way to cut off their feelings. Ha ha ha, what happened to them in the end? One was suppressed by me under the Frowning Tower, never to be reincarnated, while the other died on the Misty Peak, never to enter the 6 paths of reincarnation. But, after all, they had loved before. Zhang Xiaohua was infuriated. She moved her divine sense, and a few rays of sword light pierced towards Ye, aiming at Ye's head, which was not covered by the demonic flag. You're finally willing to do it. Ye laughed, if you kill me, you'll never see your dream. The small sword was like lightning, piercing Ye's face, but, just as the flying sword touched Ye's face, the demonic flag quietly extended upwards, covering Ye's entire face, blocking the small sword. Zhang Xiaohua did not expect to succeed like this. At the same time she used the flying sword, she reached out her hand, wanting to take out the Hao Tian mirror, but, the Hao Tian mirror was connected to the other 9 instruments. Zhang Xiaohua was in a hurry, she could not take it out. Left with no choice, Zhang Xiaohua took out the Sangharama plate beside her. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua take out the Sangharama plate, Peacock gritted her teeth. She did not know what to feel. Although she had already guessed that Great Elder Jing Gang was killed by Zhang Xiaohua, she did not want to admit it. Zhang Xiaohua could not care less. She held the Sangharama plate in her hand, made a gesture with her right hand, and vital energy was emitted from her fingertips. Then, she pointed at the plate, and from the Sangharama plate, a ball of light blue brilliance appeared, and a wave of turbulent sound was heard. Then, Zhang Xiaohua gritted her teeth and pointed her finger. The brilliance was like a water column, directly covering Ye's head. Ye laughed, you're just a cultivator in the qi refining stage, what can you do? This little bit of congenital water is not even enough to wash my feet. Sure enough, Ye did not move at all. When the congenital water column as heavy as a mountain fell, he waved his sleeve, and a faint black gas was emitted from the demonic flag, turning into a faint black lotus, which was supported by the light blue brilliance. Although the water was turbulent, it could not smash down no matter what. Next, Zhang Xiaohua did not hesitate. He took out the dragon binding hoop and tossed it into the air. The dragon binding hoop grew in the wind, and flames appeared around it. It turned into a hoop that was about 10 feet wide and covered Ya's head. These are just some toys, but they are just for me to play with. Ya had a faint smile on his face, and he did not activate the demonic flag. He only pointed his hand in the air, and a red light flashed, hitting the dragon binding hoop. With a keng sound, the light on the dragon binding hoop was extinguished, and the flames were extinguished. With a pu sound, Ya fell from the air. Humph! Zhang Xiaohua snorted coldly, and took out 2 purple phoenix hairpins, one in each hand, and sent all her true qi into the 2 purple phoenix hairpins. Kacha, kacha! 2 thunderous sounds came from the 2 purple phoenix hairpins, and in an instant, 2 bolts of lightning were emitted from each hairpin. These 2 bolts of lightning were different. The one in the left had a golden glow, and the one in the right had a white glow. When the 2 bolts of lightning flew out of the purple phoenix hairpins, they immediately absorbed the yuan qi of heaven and earth from the surrounding air, and continuously expanded. When the 2 bolts of lightning flew closer, countless tiny bolts of lightning were formed between the 2 bolts of lightning, and when they flew to Ya's head, they had already formed a net of lightning that was sizzling. This purple phoenix hairpin is the token of love between Yuming Xian and Yang Haoya. How could this lord not have seen it before? If the 2 of them were to use it, perhaps this lord would be somewhat afraid. Although you've already tried your best, it's a pity that your cultivation is too weak. The purple phoenix hairpin's power is really like the light of a firefly. When Ya saw this, he didn't seem to be nervous at all. He only casually flicked his finger, and another red light struck the center of the net of lightning. Boom! Countless bolts of lightning were quickly annihilated by the red light, and in a breath's time, they were annihilated. There was still a small wisp of the red light, and it didn't stop there. It went straight for the purple phoenix hairpin in Zhang Xiaohua's hand. Zhang Xiaohua frowned, and immediately put away the purple phoenix hairpin. She then took out another item, and it was the small seal that she had obtained earlier. Zhang Xiaohua threw the small seal into the sky, and it immediately expanded, and turned into a huge rock, and directly smashed down on Ya's head. Haha, little lover, I'm afraid, you don't have anything good in your hands. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua throw out the small seal, Ya almost laughed out loud. He pointed his finger, and the seal immediately spun in the air, and fell from the sky. However, Zhang Xiaohua really had a lot of things in her hands. Before the small seal fell, she took out another item from her bosom, and it was the so-called 7 Wonders tree. Hee, little lover, you really have a lot of treasures. Unfortunately, this 7 Wonders tree belongs to the Buddhist sect. Can you control it? Ya sneered. Bang! The crimson light hit the wonderful tree of 7 treasures. Zhang Xiaohua's hand trembled, and then his chest trembled. He didn't know how Ya did it. She couldn't control her body anymore, and the 7 Wonders tree in her hand fell in the direction of Zhang Xiaohu and the rest. Zhang Xiaohua's body was in mid-air, and the blood in her chest was boiling, and a mouthful of blood rushed up to her throat. When she landed beside the lotus throne, she could only calm her blood, and a small stream of blood still seeped out from the corner of her mouth. Xiaohua! Zhang Xiaohu saw Zhang Xiaohua vomiting blood, and immediately panicked and called out. As for Peacock and Chen Chen, when they saw that there were traces of golden blood on Zhang Xiaohua's body, they were shocked. Ha ha ha, how is it? Ya laughed wildly. With the demon flag, even though I have less than 30% of my previous cultivation, but here, there is no one who can defeat me. As he spoke, a condensed divine sense was released from Ya, and it swept towards Zhang Xiaohua with extreme fierceness. This! Zhang Xiaohua was stunned. The divine sense was extremely dense and heavy. Her divine sense was similar to Ya's, but she was just an infant boy who didn't know how to walk. Zhang Xiaohua looked at the dreamlike face. No, Ya was a dream. She opened her eyes wide, gritted her teeth, and reached her hand into her chest again. Just now, she couldn't control the Hao Tian mirror, and it should be because of the 10 magical items in the pouch. But now, other than the Hao Tian mirror, Zhang Xiaohua only had a few pearls and a few gourds, and she didn't know how to use them. Thinking about it, Zhang Xiaohua took out the Hao Tian mirror. It seemed that the Hao Tian mirror was unwilling to appear, and in Zhang Xiaohua's hand, it was as heavy as 10,000 pounds. Ah! Kunlun mirror. When you saw the Hao Tian mirror, his eyeballs almost fell out, and he pointed at Zhang Xiaohua in disbelief. When did you see Xiaohua? Is he here too? As he spoke, his eyes didn't stop looking around. His divine sense also spread out in all directions. Zhang Xiaohua didn't give her time to think. Although he didn't master the first level of the Hao Tian mirror, and the Hao Tian mirror didn't listen to him, he still poured his true energy into the Hao Tian mirror as if it didn't cost money. After receiving his true energy, the Hao Tian mirror gradually emitted a faint brilliance, and the surface of the mirror gradually became blurry. You looked around and didn't see the so-called immortal Xiaohua, so she was relieved. Then, she looked at Zhang Xiaohua's method of pouring his true energy into the Hao Tian mirror and laughed. Little husband, I think you haven't seen Xiaohua, and your mirror isn't the Kunlun mirror. Xiaohua's Kunlun mirror isn't something that a chi refining kid like you can control. But then, she tilted her head and said, but, why do you look so similar to Xiaohua? Also, you haven't seen Xiaohua, but you can actually disguise yourself as him? It's really strange. But if this mirror is really the Kunlun mirror, then can't I escape into the void at will? While they were talking, the Kunlun mirror shone brightly, as if something was about to rush out, but Ye didn't seem to panic, and he only scanned Zhang Xiaohua's surroundings with his divine sense, and laughed again. Don't use your strength, little husband. If this isn't the Kunlun mirror, even if you can use it, you can't do anything to me. But if it is the Kunlun mirror, it is one of the 10 heaven-opening treasures, which can only be used by immortals. You are just a mortal, how can you control it? Why don't you leave a little bit of your true chi, and we can sit down and have a good chat? Before he finished speaking, the Haotian mirror dimmed again, and Zhang Xiaohua felt a huge force coming from the Haotian mirror, which hit her dantian. An incomparable discomfort gushed out from her body, and with a puff, she spat out a mouthful of essence blood, which fell on the Haotian mirror. With a whoosh, the Haotian mirror shone brightly, and a huge suction force came from the Haotian mirror, which swept away all the true chi in Zhang Xiaohua's body like a whale swallowing water. With a buzz, the Haotian mirror trembled slightly, and suddenly, a misty light shot towards you. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua spit out a mouthful of blood on the Haotian mirror, you felt something was wrong. As soon as the light came out, he immediately flashed, and several black phantoms appeared in front of Zhang Xiaohua. The light of the Haotian mirror hit the phantoms, and all the phantoms were shattered into pieces, revealing Ye in midair. Kunlun mirror. Is this really the Kunlun mirror? Ye still didn't believe it, but his body didn't slow down. The light of the Haotian mirror was like a maggot in a tarsal bone, and wherever you flew, the light would follow. So what if it's the Kunlun mirror? After flying for a while, Ye's face turned cold, and he landed on the ground. With a wave of his hand, the demonic flag was pulled out from his body, and he threw it in midair, which was in front of the light. With a puff, the light hit the demonic flag, and the black gas on the demonic flag surged, and it instantly disappeared like a snowflake that was doused with hot water. Ye looked at the demonic flag with great heartache, and the black gas on it gradually dimmed. Fortunately, the light of the Haotian mirror also gradually dissipated. When the light of the Haotian mirror completely dissipated, Ye let out a long breath, and landed in front of Zhang Xiaohua. He looked at Zhang Xiaohua from head to toe, and the expression in his eyes was extremely strange. You? Who are you? How did Xiaohua's Kunlun mirror fall into your hands? Zhang Xiaohua looked at Ye, and she had already put the Haotian mirror into her purse. She sneered and said, Of course I am me, and I don't know who Xiaohua is. This mirror is called the Haotian mirror, and not the Kunlun mirror that you mentioned. Ah! It really is the Kunlun mirror. Ye's face was filled with excitement, but his face was also extremely puzzled. The Kunlun mirror is an honorific name for the Haotian mirror, and this mirror is the Haotian mirror. As he spoke, his face turned cold again. I don't care how you know Xiaohua, You better quickly hand over the Kunlun mirror. An unparalleled divine sense attacked Zhang Xiaohua, but just when the divine sense touched Zhang Xiaohua, the divine sense suddenly stopped and quickly retracted. The red color in Ye's eyes gradually dimmed, and Meng actually came out again. Xiaohua. I'm afraid that I can only see you for the last time. I have something that I always wanted to tell you. If I don't say it, I won't be able to die in peace. Although Meng didn't have any cultivation, under the support of the devil flag, she also floated in the air. At this moment, how could Zhang Xiaohua still care whether she was Meng or Ye? She reluctantly used the last of her true energy to fly to Meng's side. Xiaohua. Don't despise me. As Meng spoke, she stretched out her hand and grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's hand. Although my consciousness has the seed of Ye, my heart and my body love you. I know. Zhang Xiaohua nodded with tears in her eyes. Actually, Xiaohua, I feel that I'm quite lucky. You didn't know how many saintesses' consciousnesses before, and each of them was only a few years old. Those saintesses had never tasted the taste of love, and I'm very grateful to God for arranging for me to meet you in my inevitable ending, and to have a mutual love with you. Although, this love is just the effect of the heart-binding curse, but Xiaohua, it is the real love between us. Love is love. No matter how it appears, if it exists, then it exists. Even Ye, she can't deny it. Zhang Xiaohua opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but she couldn't say anything. Meng held his hand again and said, I've always wanted to help you in times of need, but unfortunately, I'm afraid our promise won't come true. However, perhaps it's more suitable for us to forget each other in the pugilistic world. Since it's better to forget each other in the pugilistic world than to help each other in times of need, then Xiaohua, let's forget each other in the pugilistic world. Suddenly, Zhang Xiaohua's hand tightened, and Meng's eyes began to turn red again. Quick, Xiaohua, there's no time. I feel that I'm getting weaker and weaker. If you don't do it while I'm still alive, you'll never have the chance to do it again. If you can't live, how can we forget each other in the pugilistic world? If you can't kill Ye, then, who in the world can stop her? I'm afraid everyone in the world will be killed by her as a sacrifice to the flag? Meng's eyes gradually turned red, and Meng's face was filled with reluctance and desperation. Zhang Xiaohua gritted her teeth, and Chasing Dream turned into countless sword lights, stabbing towards Meng's throat. However, just as the flying sword was about to pierce Meng's throat, the demonic flag extended upwards, blocking the flying sword, and the flying sword couldn't pierce any further. Zhang Xiaohua was shocked, and her divine sense moved again, attacking Meng's head. However, the demonic flag covered the entire head like before, and the flying sword couldn't enter. Ha ha ha, you finally appeared, and grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's hand. What an affectionate husband, but what kind of intimate method is this? The flying sword was useless, and it flew towards Zhang Xiaohua again. Zhang Xiaohua saw Chasing Dream, and her eyes lit up. She reached out with her left hand, and grabbed it. Then, with the nameless sword skill, she stabbed towards Ye's throat. The strange flow of energy from her left arm flowed out from a mysterious place, and it flowed into Chasing Dream along her arm. Hee, with such a small sword, how can it hurt me? Ye was extremely disdainful, and like swatting a fly, he swatted the small sword away from his throat. Zhang Xiaohua didn't stop there, and she stabbed towards Ye's heart. Little sweetheart, don't tell me, you want to get physical now? Ye smiled, and puffed out her towering chest. However, before she could say another word, Chasing Dream had already stabbed Ye's chest. The demonic flag's black fog churned, and a red light flashed, but, with a poochie sound, the demonic flag that the flying sword couldn't pierce was pierced through by Chasing Dream. Just as Ye was still smiling, Chasing Dream stabbed into her heart, and the flow of energy flowed into her heart. Ye's face was pale, and she said in disbelief, what kind of magic weapon is this? Zhang Xiaohua didn't dare to answer. Chasing Dream in his hand had pierced an extremely hard spot. As the energy flowed in, that extremely hard spot immediately exploded, releasing an extremely strong force, and quickly hit Chasing Dream. Chasing Dream, or should it be called Chasing Dream now, instantly turned into powder, and purplish red blood flowed out from Ye's heart, and immediately flowed onto the demonic flag. The demonic flag absorbed Ye's blood, and a red light flashed again. Ye was shocked, and she hurriedly used her heart technique, wanting to heal the wound in her heart. Unfortunately, that mysterious flow of energy had already destroyed Ye's heart. No matter what method Ye used, the blood in her heart continued to flow out, and her heart was gradually destroyed along with the flow of energy. Ye pointed at Zhang Xiaohua, and wanted to use her magic power to kill her, but it was too late. In just a moment, the demonic flag gradually fell off from Ye's body, revealing Ye in purple robes. Xiaohua, you finally succeeded. The red light in Ye's eyes receded, and the dream came out again. She smiled and said, I will never see you again in the future, but you finally hit Ye's vital point. Ye no longer cares about devouring me, she is looking for a way to save herself. After that, the dream looked at the snowflakes that were still fluttering in the sky, and the red clouds in the sky, and said sadly, this is leaving? Am I going to leave this world just like this? But, to be able to accompany the man in my heart for so long, I am already satisfied. Xiaohua, do you think there is really immortality in this world? Yeah, she is so heartless. What is the meaning of living for so long? If there is some elixir of immortality, I won't use it myself. If you want to use it, let's use it together. Zhang Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He flew forward and held Meng in his arms. He took out the longevity pill from his money bag and held it in front of Meng's eyes. He said sadly, perhaps this is what you call the elixir of immortality. This? The dream felt strange, and reached out to take it, opened the bottle, and looked at the pill inside. But then, a strange smile appeared on her face, and she shook her head slightly. I know this thing. From Ye's memory, this seems to be an extremely precious beauty pill in the cultivation world. After taking it, you can keep your face at that time for the rest of your life. Ha ha ha, the dream's eyes turned red again, and Ye said, this kind of pill is a woman's favorite. I can still get it when I am about to die, then, let me take it. After that, Ye was about to put that beauty pill in her hand into her mouth, but just as her hand was about to reach her mouth, she stretched it out again, and handed it to Zhang Xiaohua's mouth. The dream said, Xiaohua, you can eat it. I hope you can keep your current appearance, and not change even after 100 years. Wait for my next life. I will come and find you again. The dream's eyes just stared at Zhang Xiaohua's face, as if she wanted to imprint his appearance deeply in her heart, and even reincarnation could not erase it. Zhang Xiaohua's nose was filled with tears, and he sniffed the sweet fragrance between the dream's fingers. He put the beauty pill in his mouth, and it melted as soon as it entered his mouth, and turned into a medicinal power that went into his stomach. By the way, Xiaohua, Ye has destroyed the sheepskin scroll in the dense forest just now, but I know that she did not destroy the previous one. She hid it in. The dream seemed to think of something again, and whispered a few words in Zhang Xiaohua's ear. At this time, Zhang Xiaohua was very sad, so how could he care about this? Although the blood in the dream's chest was flowing slowly, it was still flowing. Zhang Xiaohua knew that when the blood stopped flowing, it would be the time for the dream to leave, and he would never be able to see the person he loved again. Their fingers were interlocked, and their eyes were looking at each other. For a long time, they did not speak. Suddenly, the dream's face was full of shock, and he pushed Zhang Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, quickly go. Ye is staking everything to die with you. Then, the dream looked deeply at Zhang Xiaohua for the last time, and used his left hand to pull Zhang Xiaohua's head over, and deeply kissed Zhang Xiaohua's lips, and said with a smile, I guessed the process, but I did not guess the ending. This process will forever be engraved in my heart, Xiaohua, wait, in the next life. I will love you again. As she spoke, she waved her hand and tightly grasped the demonic flag before closing her eyes. Meng's expression started to change. First, it was pain. Then, it frowned. After that, it started to emit lights of various colors. In the end, Meng's figure suddenly flew up into the sky. With a bang, she exploded and the demonic flag was blasted away. Dream! Zhang Xiaohua shouted, and flew into the air, and reached out to grab the demon flag, but besides the disappearing blood stain on the flag, there was only the ring Zhang Xiaohua gave Dream. At that moment, Zhang Xiaohua suddenly felt a popping sound in his heart. It was as if a lock had been unlocked, and the key to the lock was in the air in front of him. Zhang Xiaohua froze for a moment, then seemed to understand. He opened his left hand and released all of the divine sense in his Naiwan palace into his delirium dharma eye. When the silver-white eyes opened, Zhang Xiaohua could clearly see that Meng was floating not far from him. Next to Meng was Ye, who looked exactly like Meng, but was pitch black, had horns on her head, and had a pair of wings on her back. Zhang Xiaohua didn't have time to think and chased after Meng. However, just as he was about to catch up, a pitch-black crack opened beside Meng Ye, and the two of them were about to enter the crack. Dream! Zhang Xiaohua shouted, and reached out his right hand, to grab Dream's hand. Dream seemed to sense it and turned to look at Zhang Xiaohua. It was a pair of large eyes, thick eyebrows, a dimple, and a beauty mark. The end of the book, November 24, 2011, 22:53. Chapter 1135. At this moment, Zhang Xiaohua raised her eyebrows again. She seemed to look outside and instructed, Xiaohua Ji, there's an announcement outside saying that a distinguished guest has come to visit. Go and welcome the guest on behalf of Master. Xiaohua Ji was stunned. She put down the things in her hands and nodded. Yes, disciple will go out now. Shui Tian, on the other hand, stared at Zhang Xiaohua with wide eyes filled with disbelief. He then turned his head to look at Ji Xiaohua's back. He was extremely envious and wanted to follow him to take a look. Although O Yen and the others were surprised, they didn't show it on their faces. They only tidied up the things in the room slightly and glanced at the door from time to time. Not long after, Xiaohua Ji walked in with a few people. They were Zhang Xiaohua, Hu Yuni, Li Jian, Du Feng, and Ding Chao. Du Feng and Ding Chao were holding various gifts in their hands. Their faces were also filled with surprise and disbelief. Hu Yuni and the others entered the room. They only took a glance before walking to Zhang Xiaohua. They bowed and said respectfully, "Greetings, Immortal Elder. I've received Immortal Elder's kindness and have specially come to thank you today." As he spoke, he waved his hand. Du Feng and Ding Chao presented their gifts. Hu Yuni continued, "I've asked gang leader Zhang this morning. I know that Immortal Elder has a noble character and doesn't like worldly things. It's difficult for me to find immortal things in a short time, so I've taken out the calligraphy and paintings that I've collected for decades. I hope Immortal Elder doesn't dislike them. This is also a small token of my appreciation." Zhang Xiaohua was overjoyed when she heard this. She waved her hand and said, "Elder Hu is too polite. I have a deep relationship with your sect. I'm sure you've heard the reason from my second brother. Helping Elder Hu was just a matter of convenience. Elder Hu's politeness makes it seem like I have ulterior motives. No, it's just a small token of my appreciation. It's really not enough to show my respect. I hope Immortal Elder can give me some face and accept it." Hu Yuni said in panic. "Xiaohua, these are all Elder Hu's own things. He has been looking for me since a long time ago. He is very sincere. You should just accept them." Zhang Xiaohu knew that Zhang Xiaohua liked gold and silver and might not understand the value of these paintings, so he immediately reminded her. This. Zhang Xiaohua listened and nodded. Since it is Elder Hu's kind intention, then I will accept it. I can't let Elder Hu's face fall to the ground. Thank you, Senior Immortal, Hu Yuni said with a smile. Oh Yen, take these things. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said to Oh Yen. Yes, head senior brother. Oh Yen answered in a low voice and stepped forward to take the calligraphy and painting from Du Feng and Ding Chao's hands. When Hu Yuni and the others saw Oh Yen in the room, they thought that she was just sitting there idly. Hearing her address Zhang Xiaohua as senior martial brothers sect leader, they couldn't help but feel surprised. Hu Yuni couldn't help but ask, Yanzi, you, Oh Yen took the calligraphy and painting first. She looked at Hu Yuni and Li Jian with a face full of smiles and said, Big brother, second brother, thanks to Senior Immortal for accepting me as a disciple of Beta School a few days ago. Although I am a disciple of an immortal, I still call him Senior Martial Brother. Ah! When Hu Yuni and Li Jian heard this, they were both surprised and pleasantly surprised. Oh Yen was Oh Peng's younger sister and the only blood relative he had left in the world. Hu Yuni and Li Jian naturally had to take care of Oh Yen carefully so that they wouldn't let down the dead Oh Peng. Now that they heard that Oh Yen, who couldn't practice martial arts, was actually a disciple of an immortal, who would dare to bully Oh Yen in the future? How could they not be happy? Hu Yuni bowed again and said, Thank you for your kindness, Senior Immortal. I thank you on behalf of my dead fourth brother. Zhang Xiaohua said with a smile, Elder Hu, you should sit down first. You repeatedly bowed and thanked me as soon as you entered the room. I really feel uncomfortable. Elder Hu, Elder Li, Vice Hall Master Du and Vice Hall Master Ding, please take a seat. Zhang Xiaohu stood at the side and greeted. Xiaohua had already brought some chairs. At this time, Hu Yuni and Li Jian were already seated. Only Ding Chao and Du Feng walked to Zhang Xiaohua and bowed. We didn't know that it was Senior Immortal who helped us on Shixin Peak, so we have always misunderstood Senior Immortal. Moreover, we have offended you on Shixin Peak. Please forgive us. Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, I'll say the same thing again. I'm fated to meet Ethereal Sect. Since I've arrived at Shixin Peak and saw that you are the elites of Ethereal Sect, I've been delighted for a long time. Since I can help you, I'll naturally help you without thinking too much. I only hope that you will be loyal to Misty School in the future and make Misty School more famous than before. Ding Chao and Du Feng's faces turned serious and they said in unison, Senior Immortal's kindness is like giving us a new life. Although we are slow-witted, we also know that in the future, we will follow sect leader Zhang's lead and carry forward Misty School's orthodoxy. Good. Zhang Xiaohua clapped her hands and said, In this way, I did not waste my efforts. Deputy Hall leaders Ding and Du are the outstanding young disciples of Misty School. Your future is limitless. Please sit down. That's right, Elder Hu, how are your injuries? Zhang Xiaohua asked with a smile. Thank you, Senior Immortal, for bestowing the medicine. The poison in my body has already been removed yesterday. This morning, I asked the medicine hall's elder to take a look and there was nothing left. As for the injuries in my meridians, under the effect of Senior Immortal's medicinal pill, I have already healed 30% in one night. If nothing unexpected happens, I should be able to fully recover in 2 days. Hu Yuni said, unable to conceal the joy in his voice. That's just right. I was afraid that this medicinal pill was wrong. Zhang Xiaohua nodded and said, although the injuries in Elder Hu's meridians are serious, it's mainly because you overworked yourself these past few years and didn't properly recuperate. As for I's medicinal pill, it's actually somewhat wasteful. Hu Yuni stared blankly and asked curiously, what do you mean, Senior Immortal? Zhang Xiaohua said mysteriously, if Elder Hu's meridians heal and then refine the residual medicinal power with his internal strength, something surprising will happen. Senior Immortal's meaning is. Hu Yuni had also taken the qi-generating pill, so how could he not understand? He immediately thought of saluting. Zhang Xiaohua promptly waved her hand and asked, also. I still want to ask. Shui Yupeng's corpse, how should we deal with it? Hearing his master's question, Shui Tian unconsciously perked his ears and listened carefully. Hu Yunyi sat down again and took a deep breath. He slowly calmed his excited mood and said, I came here today to report to Senior Immortal. This morning, I already discussed it with gang leader Zhang. Vice gang leader Shui Yupeng was resisting the invasion of the Righteous Tao Alliance and risked her life to pursue them. However, she mistakenly fell into the Righteous Tao Alliance's ambush and unfortunately fell. This is my Misty School's great loss, so, my Misty School wants to give her a grand funeral. Grand Master. Shui Tian heard this and ran out a few steps. He knelt in front of Hu Yunyi and cried, many thanks. Grandmaster, this child, why are you thanking me? If you want to thank someone, you should thank gang leader Zhang and your master. Hu Yunyi scolded, but his hand lovingly stroked Shui Tiantian's small head. Shui Tian heard this and indeed turned his head, wanting to thank Zhang Xiaohu and Zhang Xiaohua. Zhang Xiaohua waved her hand and said, one is your master, the other is your second martial uncle. What's the point of thanking them? In the future, it's better to cultivate properly and not waste the kindness of your master and your second martial uncle. Shui Tian was quite obedient. His face showed unswerving determination as he nodded and said, many thanks to master and second martial uncle. This disciple will engrave these in my heart. Hu Yunyi and Li Jian said a few more words. The two looked at each other, and Hu Yunyi turned his head to Zhang Xiaohu and said, gang leader Zhang, this old man has a few things to ask Senior Immortal. I hope gang leader Zhang won't take it to heart. Zhang Xiaohu was stunned, and then he smiled and said, Elder Hu, please ask. If it's not convenient, I can also leave. Hu Yunyi waved his hand and said there was no need. Zhang Xiaohua asked curiously, Elder Hu, what is it? This. Hu Yunyi hesitated before he said, Senior Immortal is an expert in the path of immortality. Naturally, you know that our Misty School was a sect of the path of immortality 10,000 years ago. But later on, the inheritance of the path of immortality has been lost. Since Senior Immortal can help gang leader Zhang set foot on the path of immortality, then, can you also find the inheritance of the path of immortality of our Misty School? So that our Misty School can continue to pass on the path of immortality of our Misty School? Of course, this request is a little too much. However, Immortal Elder is also the younger brother of the sect leader of Ethereal Sect. We can only be thick-skinned and make this request. Li Jian said with a smile. Ha ha ha. Zhang Xiaohua was amused. It turned out that Hu Yunyi and Li Jian still didn't quite believe Zhang Xiaohu's words. They thought that Zhang Xiaohu's path of immortality was the same as Du Feng and Ding Chao's, which was why they asked Zhang Xiaohua to help them find the inheritance of the Misty School. Seeing Zhang Xiaohua laugh, Hu Yunyi and Li Jian secretly complained, thinking that Zhang Xiaohua was unwilling to help. Just as they were about to speak, they heard Zhang Xiaohu say with a smile, Elders, regarding this matter. You don't have to ask Xiaohua anymore. A few days ago, he already gave me the inheritance of the path of immortality of our Misty School. Ah! Li Jian and Hu Yunyi were pleasantly surprised. Is this true? Yes, it is. Zhang Xiaohua added. I have already entered your Misty Palace and Inheritance Pavilion, and I also told second brother how to enter and exit. Ah! Hu Yunyi was really overjoyed. Oh, right, I didn't take any of the things in your Misty School's Inheritance Pavilion. If you don't believe me, you can ask your gang leader. He also went in to take a look. In the future, I won't be able to enter that place, so you don't have to worry. Zhang Xiaohua said again. I'm just surprised. I don't doubt Senior Immortal's intentions. Hu Yunyi quickly explained. Xiaohua is telling the truth. I've already checked the second floor of the Inheritance Pavilion. There's nothing missing. Zhang Xiaohu nodded and said, also. I saw the portrait of our Misty School's founder, Yang Haoya, on the first floor of the Inheritance Pavilion, and I entered the Dao through it. Please vote monthly, recommend, bookmark, and tip. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote monthly and recommend at Chidian. Calm. Chapter 1136. Zhang Xiaohu then recounted what had happened in the Inheritance Pavilion. Finally, he said, I have received great favor from martial ancestor Yang and have stepped onto the path of immortality. I will definitely pass down the teachings of Misty School's path of immortality. However, the situation in Jianghu right now is dangerous. My Misty School is being watched by the Incense Cult and the Righteous Path Alliance. Before I am 100% certain, I cannot reveal this matter. Otherwise, it will lead to the destruction of our sect. In the future, when I have the opportunity, I will choose some of my Misty School's talented disciples and secretly pass down the path of immortality to them. Alright. After hearing Zhang Xiaohu's words, what else could Hu Yuni and Li Jian say? At this time, the Misty School was not only theirs, but also Zhang Xiaohu's. How could he not consider passing down the teachings of immortality? Also, the two elders need not be too worried. I once promised martial ancestor Yang that my Beta School and Misty School will be eternal friends. In the future, my Beta School will definitely not leave the legacy of Misty School alone. Zhang Xiaohua comforted them. Then, he slapped his head and said, You still say that? Come. I will introduce you to my Beta School's disciples. Hu Yuni and Li Jian both nodded. However, Zhang Xiaohua's first sentence almost made the two of them fall to the ground. Go, bring your eldest senior brother here. This was Zhang Xiaohua's order to Xiaohua Ji. As expected, Hu Yuni and Li Jian didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they saw Zhang Bairen, who didn't say he was 3 or 4 years old. They didn't know what to say, but when they saw Zhang Xiaohua's calm and collected appearance, they could only nod and congratulate him. After that, Zhang Xiaohua introduced his 2 disciples, Ji Xiaohua and Shui Tian, as well as his 3 junior sisters, Nie Qianyu, Zhang Pinger, and O Yan. Finally, he smiled and said, Of the 7 disciples of my Beta School, there is only one left. It should be Chu Jing from Dragon Mountain. I have already asked second brother to send someone to pick him up, but I don't know why he hasn't returned yet. Zhang Xiaohua nodded. Dragon Mountain is very far from here. It's impossible to return in a short period of time. I have already sent the elite disciples of the Divine Engineering sect. Don't worry. Zhang Xiaohua shook his head slightly. The situation in Jianghu right now is unpredictable. The immortal abode on Mount Yaoshan is about to appear, and various forces are gathering around Mount Yaoshan. The journey may not be peaceful. I can't rest assured, so I still need to make a trip. By the way, Immortal Elder, since you mentioned Immortal's residence in advance, is it because of the rainbow glow on Mountain Yao? Hu Yuni suddenly asked. Yes. Zhang Xiaohua knew what Hu Yuni wanted to say. He said, I have already warned second brother that your Misty School shouldn't interfere. Hu Yuni was very curious. Just as he was about to turn around and ask Zhang Xiaohu spoke himself, elderly, I also heard from Ancestral Master Yang about the Yaoshan Immortal Abode. Xiaohua wants to establish a sect on Yaoshan Immortal Abode and build his Big Dipper sect on top of the Immortal Abode. Of course, Little Blossom said that he wants to snatch the Immortal Mansion, but he might not be able to. My ethereal sect naturally has the qualifications to snatch it. I won't give this opportunity to him just because he is my younger brother. But, the Tenryu's sect has already attracted all the sects in Jianghu, regardless of their size. Just by looking at the news from the Divine Mechanics Hall, the Dalan Temple, the Incense Sect, the Alliance of the Righteous Path, Between the Clouds and the Water, the Fallen Stars Alliance, and the Canopy Dock have all turned out in full force to try their luck. Although we haven't received any news from the Tenryus sect, will they not come? Elder Hu, do you think it's better for my Misty School to conserve my energy and gain a firm foothold in Jianghu? Or do you think it's better for my Misty School to cultivate the Immortals' legacy and restore my reputation as a great Misty School, or to compete with the other sects in Jianghu to snatch the Immortals' residence? When Hu Yuni and Li Jian heard about the rainbow-colored glow, they were also filled with passion and wanted to bring their disciples to try their luck. Now that they heard about the Immortals' residence, it wasn't something that could be easily obtained. With the Misty School's current strength, and the power that had been declining for thousands of years, it was impossible for them to snatch it. If they hadn't obtained the Immortals' legacy, Hu Yuni might have tried to persuade them or even cooperate with Zhang Xiaohua. But now that they knew that they had obtained their own legacy and saw the dawn of the Misty School's revival, they naturally didn't want to give up their own legacy to snatch the Immortals' chestnut. Hu Yuni nodded and said, "Sect leader Zhang is right. Nowadays, the disciples of the Misty School can't differentiate between the good and the bad. The former disciples of the Incense Cult, the former disciples of the Righteous Alliance, the Misty School disciples that I brought, and the former disciples of the Misty School, we haven't even figured out our own situation yet, so how can we have the time to look for trouble? Moreover, if we bring these disciples over, the Incense Cult and the Righteous Alliance might just shout and these disciples will all return to their sections. Won't we go for wool but come home shorn? Since Elder Hu can see it so clearly, I don't need to explain. I was afraid that Elder Hu would misunderstand that I had given the Immortal Mansion to Little Blossom for personal reasons because of my brother's matter. Of course not. Li Jian also laughed and said, "Everyone in Jianghu has seen the Immortals' residence, and it doesn't belong to Immortal Zhang alone. To be honest, the Incense Cult, the Righteous Alliance, the Dalan Temple, and the Tenryus sect are all stronger than the Beta School. Whether Immortal Zhang can come out on top, it's really hard to say." Zhang Xiaohua laughed and said, "Isn't that the case? If I don't snatch the Immortals' residence, the Beta School won't have a place to set up its sect. When that happens, the Misty School will have to help I. Haha, that's a must. The Misty School and the Beta School are good friends forever, so we can't not help." Hu Yuni and Li Jian said in unison. They almost grabbed Zhang Xiaohua's hand and asked him to merge the Beta School with the Misty School. The people of the Misty School had a long talk with the disciples of the Beta School led by Zhang Xiaohua. They reminisced about the past entangled grievances and looked forward to the bright and beautiful future. Only then did they bring the original chief disciple of the Misty School, Shui Tian, to take care of Shui Yupeng's funeral. They bid farewell to Zhang Xiaohua and left the Huanxi villa. After the people of the Misty School left, Zhang Xiaohua looked at O Yen and said, "Junior sister O, what Elder Hu said is indeed reasonable. I was too conceited before and wanted to take the Immortals' residence as the foundation of our Beta School. But now that I think about it, although I have the cultivation of the path of immortality, I'm still far behind Shirtai Jingyi and Elder Hu, not to mention Sakura. Moreover, there are many people from the Xiangjiao sect, the Dalan Temple, and the Tenryus sect. We only have 8 people. Even the Misty School has to think about this matter. I'm afraid we'll have a hard time. Therefore, we still have to plan for both sides. I'm not familiar with the geographical location, and I even get lost when walking. This kind of thing still needs to be handled by you." O Yen smiled and said, "Senior brother sect leader, this matter is naturally handled by me, so you don't have to worry about it. Actually, I've already been looking around. If there's a suitable place, I might as well buy it with some money." "Buy it with money?" When Zhang Xiaohua heard this, she was a little stunned. Then, she smiled and said, "Junior sister O, I was just joking when I said that I would buy you a place with money. Our Beta School started off as a path of immortality. If we were to build it in a densely populated place, where would we find the chi of heaven and earth to cultivate? You'd better, or I'll look for my second brother and ask him to pay attention to a place with beautiful scenery." O Yan's face was a little red. She knew in her heart that she didn't have the aptitude for cultivation. Zhang Xiaohua accepted her as a disciple out of gratitude, And also because she valued her ability to deal with things. She had misunderstood the first thing that Zhang Xiaohua told her, so she immediately stood up and said, I understand. I misunderstood senior brother's meaning and delayed senior brother's matter. It's all my fault. I'll do as senior brother said. Why would Zhang Xiaohua think so much? He had picked up too many scraps in the past. This immortal mansion, he also treated it as a magic tool and wanted to steal it. He even shamelessly told Zhang Xiaohua that he valued this thing and that the Misty School shouldn't get involved. Now that she thought about it, she realized that she had overestimated herself. There were many heroes in Jianghu, and there were many capable people. Not to mention the Incense School and other Path of Immortality sects, who could guarantee that there wouldn't be Zhang Xiaohua in the other Path of Immortality sects in Jianghu. She thought about how she had always been hiding behind others, pretending to be a pig to eat an elephant. Maybe there was someone she couldn't see who had the strength to fight with her. Therefore, when she heard Yen blame herself, Zhang Xiaohua quickly waved her hand and said, What are you talking about? I'm just. Sigh, I didn't think it through and put all my eggs in the basket of Immortal Mansion. How can I blame you for this? Anyway, our beta school will always be the same when it opens. Don't worry, take your time to find it. We'll talk about it when we find a suitable place. Hehe, this place is pretty good, we don't have to pay. If we can't find it, we'll just cultivate here. Hehe. Nye Qianyu laughed and covered her mouth, saying, It's better to go to Rejuvenation Valley here. Once senior brother sect leader reveals his identity, father can't wait to give senior brother sect leader. After she finished speaking, her face turned red. Beside her, Zhang Pinger glared at her for no reason. The meaning in her eyes was obvious. Hehe, there's no need for that. At the very least, we'll go to Dragon Mountain. That's Chu Jing's home. It's also the place of a Path of Immortality senior. Since they decided not to use Immortal Mansion as the first choice for Beta School's opening, Zhang Xiaohua put the matter of Immortal Mansion aside. He stood up and said, Out of the 7 disciples of Beta School, we're still missing one. Master has a feeling that there's something wrong with that little disciple you haven't met yet. Master will go and take a look. Yes, senior brother sect leader. Don't worry. Yen and the others smiled and said, We'll definitely do a good job with the opening of the school. When senior brother sect leader returns, we'll give him a surprise. Zhang Xiaohua understood how they felt. However, he had only gone to Dragon Mountain and back for 10 days. What could he have done? He didn't point it out and only smiled as he walked out of the room. Please vote for me. Please vote for me. Please add me. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.